Hello everyone, I am Mano Scaling, and I am here to help you today. I know you use this video to fall asleep, so before that, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, and also tell me where you are from and what time you are watching. Now get comfortable and relax. I'm Avery, 34. I closed my eyes at Devil's Den State Park in Arkansas, and the forest moved closer. That's what I tell myself now anyway, that it was the forest. That it had always been there, just waiting for someone stupid enough to blink. My husband, Marcus, bought the RV 3 months before our trip. A 2019 Winnebago Micro Mini, butter yellow with white racing stripes that made it look like an oversized Fisher-Price toy. He'd been talking about getting back to nature ever since his firm made him a junior partner, like the promotion had somehow entitled him to a midlife crisis at 37. I'd rolled my eyes when he showed me the listing, but I'd also been working 60-hour weeks at the hospital, and the idea of unplugging for a long weekend had its appeal. Devil's Den, he'd said, spreading a map across our kitchen table in Little Rock. It's only 2 hours away, but it feels like another world. Caves, rock formations, hiking trails. We can park the RV at the campground and just exist for a few days. I traced my finger along the park's boundaries on the map. Isn't there some creepy folklore about this place? Every forest in Arkansas has creepy folklore, Avery. That's half the charm. He'd grinned, that boyish smile that had first made me fall for him in med school. Come on, when's the last time we did something just for us? He had a point. Between my shifts in the ER and his caseload, we'd become two people who lived in the same house but existed in separate time zones. So I'd said yes. We left on a Thursday afternoon in late September, the RV loaded with enough supplies for a week, even though we were only staying 3 nights. Marcus drove, one hand on the wheel and the other holding mine, humming along to old Fleetwood Mac songs while the city gave way to pine forests and winding mountain roads. The leaves were just starting to turn, splashes of orange and red against the evergreen backdrop. Devil's Den State Park sits in the Boston Mountains, a strange geological anomaly where massive sandstone boulders and crevices create a landscape that looks almost prehistoric. The park gets its name from the main cave formation, a dark opening in the rock that early settlers swore led straight to hell. Local legend said the devil himself used it as a shortcut between the underworld and Arkansas, which seemed about right given the state's political climate. We arrived just before sunset, pulling into Site 32, a relatively secluded spot tucked against the tree line. The campground host, an elderly woman named Doris with steel-gray hair and deep-set eyes, had checked us in with minimal conversation. She'd paused when Marcus mentioned we were staying through Sunday. "Y'all be careful after dark," she'd said, her voice carrying a weight that seemed disproportionate to a friendly warning. "Bears?" Marcus had asked, already mentally cataloging our food storage procedures. "Among other things." Doris had handed him a poorly photocopied map of the park trails. "Stay on the marked paths. Don't wander off. And if you hear something in the woods that sounds like it needs help," she'd met my eyes directly. "It doesn't." Marcus had laughed it off as we drove to our site, dismissing it as the kind of spooky atmosphere the park probably encouraged for tourism. But I'd felt something cold settle in my stomach, a premonition I couldn't quite name. The first night passed without incident. We'd grilled burgers on the RV's external propane stove, drank wine from plastic camping cups, and made love with the kind of desperate enthusiasm that comes from remembering why you married someone in the first place. Through the RV's small windows, I could see stars scattered across the sky like shattered glass, more than I'd ever seen in Little Rock. I'd fallen asleep with Marcus's arm around me, listening to the normal sounds of the forest: crickets, the distant hoot of an owl, wind rustling through pine needles. I woke sometime after 3 a.m. to absolute silence. Not the peaceful quiet of a sleeping forest, but the suffocating absence of sound that happens when every living thing decides simultaneously to hold its breath. I lay there in the dark, Marcus snoring softly beside me, and felt the hair on my arms stand up. That's when I noticed the trees outside our window. They were closer. I know how insane that sounds. I'm a physician, a woman of science who spent 4 years of medical school learning to trust observable, measurable reality. But I'd gone to sleep looking at a clearing of at least 15 feet between the RV and the tree line, and now there was maybe 5 feet. The massive oak that had been a comfortable distance away now loomed directly outside the window, its branches nearly scraping the glass. I sat up slowly, my heart hammering against my ribs. The digital clock on the RV's dash read 3:23 a.m. I walked to the window, pressing my face against the cool glass, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The trees formed a tighter circle around our campsite now, as if they'd crept inward while we slept. In the moonlight, their shadows stretched across the ground like grasping fingers. I could see our camping chairs where we'd left them by the fire pit, but they seemed farther away, as if the clearing itself had contracted. "You're tired," I whispered to myself. "You're tired and it's dark and you're letting some old woman's ghost stories get to you." But I didn't go back to bed. I sat on the small bench by the window and watched the forest until dawn, waiting for the trees to move again. They didn't, at least not while I was looking. When Marcus woke at 7, sunlight streaming through the windows, everything looked normal. The clearing was the right size. The trees were the correct distance away. I felt foolish and exhausted, questioning what I'd seen. "You look like hell," Marcus said, kissing my forehead as he stumbled toward the RV's tiny bathroom. "Couldn't sleep," I replied, which was true enough. We spent Friday hiking the Yellow Rock Trail, a moderate 4-mile loop that took us past the park's iconic sandstone formations. The exercise felt good, the autumn air crisp and clean in my lungs. Marcus was in high spirits, stopping frequently to take photos and pointing out geological features with the enthusiasm of someone who'd watched too many nature documentaries. Other hikers passed us throughout the day, a family with 2 young kids, a pair of college-age women with expensive cameras, an older couple walking their golden retriever. Normal people doing normal things in a normal forest. My anxiety from the night before began to seem like exactly what it was, the product of exhaustion and an overactive imagination. We made it back to the RV by late afternoon. Marcus wanted to try fishing at Devil's Den Lake, so we drove the short distance and spent an hour casting lines into the murky water. We didn't catch anything, but it was peaceful, comfortable, the kind of quality time we'd been missing. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, I almost felt embarrassed about my panic the night before. Almost. We grilled chicken for dinner, and Marcus broke out the good bourbon he'd been saving. We sat in our camping chairs by the fire pit, watching the flames dance while darkness crept through the forest. Other campers' fires flickered in the distance, little beacons of civilization scattered throughout the park. "This was a good idea," I said, leaning my head on his shoulder. "I'm glad you talked me into it. See? I'm occasionally right about things." He squeezed my hand. "We should do this more often. Maybe next time we could try Petit Jean or Buffalo River." "Let's survive this trip first," I said it jokingly, but Marcus shot me a curious look. "Survive? Avery, we're car camping, not climbing Everest. What's going on with you?" I wanted to tell him about the trees, about the suffocating silence, about the crawling sensation I couldn't shake that something was fundamentally wrong with this place. But in the warm glow of the fire, with bourbon warming my stomach and my husband's arm around me, it all seemed too ridiculous to voice. "Just the stress leaving my system," I said instead. "Ignore me." We stayed by the fire until nearly 11, then retreated into the RV. Marcus fell asleep almost immediately, but I lay awake, listening. The crickets were back tonight, at least, and somewhere in the distance I could hear an owl calling. Normal sounds, safe sounds. I was almost asleep when I heard the footsteps. They circled the RV slowly, deliberately, not the quick patter of a deer or the shuffling of a raccoon, but measured bipedal steps. Human steps, except they came from directly outside our window, which was at least 8 feet off the ground when the RV was parked. I froze, barely breathing, listening to something walk around our vehicle. Around and around, always the same pace, never stopping. The footsteps had a wet quality, like bare feet on mud, even though the ground had been dry all day. I wanted to wake Marcus, but I couldn't move. The footsteps continued their circuit. 15 seconds to complete one lap, then starting again. Patient and methodical, like whatever was out there had all the time in the world. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, I forced myself to look out the window. Nothing. Just trees and darkness and the faint glow of a nearly dead campfire. But I could still hear the footsteps, clear as day, circling just out of sight. That's when I noticed the trees again. They were closer. Much closer. The oak that had been 5 feet away last night now pressed against the RV's side, its bark inches from the window. I could see the texture of it in the moonlight, could count the ridges and knots. The footsteps stopped suddenly, and in the silence that followed I heard breathing. Deep and slow and wrong, like a bellows in a forge. It came from everywhere and nowhere, surrounding the RV in a cocoon of respiration that made my skin crawl. Then I heard it speak. Avery. My name, whispered in a voice that sounded like wind through dead leaves, like insects crawling over bone, like the last breath of someone drowning. It came from outside, but also from inside the RV, from the walls themselves, from the darkness between heartbeats. Avery, close your eyes. Every instinct in my body screamed at me not to obey, but I couldn't stop myself. My eyelids fell like guillotine blades, and in the darkness behind them, I felt the forest move. The RV shuddered and groaned, and I knew that when I opened my eyes again, everything would be different. Closer, tighter. The forest was contracting around us like a fist, and we were caught in its palm. I don't know how long I kept my eyes closed. It could have been seconds or hours. Time felt elastic, stretchy, like taffy being pulled. But when I finally forced them open, the sun was rising, and Marcus was shaking my shoulder. "Avery! Babe, wake up. What are you doing on the floor?" I was curled in a ball between the bench and the small table, my muscles cramped and aching. I had no memory of getting there. The last thing I remembered was lying in bed, listening to footsteps. I don't know. I let Marcus help me up, wincing at the pain in my back. "What time is it?" "Almost 7. You must have had a nightmare or something." He studied my face with concern. "You want to talk about it?" I looked out the window. The trees were so close now that branches scraped against the RV's sides. The clearing had shrunk to maybe 6 feet in diameter, just enough space for our vehicle and nothing else. The forest had swallowed everything. Our camping chairs, the fire pit, even the picnic table that had been at our site. "Marcus," my voice came out strangled. "Don't you see it?" "See what?" "The trees. I gestured frantically at the window. "They're right on top of us. The clearing is gone." He looked where I was pointing, and I saw his expression shift from concern to something more alarming. Pity. "Avery, the trees are where they've always been. Same as when we pulled in." He put a hand on my forehead. "You feel okay? You're not feverish, but you look exhausted. Maybe we should cut the trip short. Head back to Little Rock." I stared at him, then back at the window. The oak was close enough that I could see individual leaves, could count the acorns clustered on its branches. Close enough that if the window opened I could reach out and touch its bark. But Marcus clearly didn't see what I was seeing. To him, everything looked normal. "I'm fine," I lied, because the alternative, that I was losing my mind, was too terrifying to consider. "Just didn't sleep well. Maybe some coffee will help." We made breakfast in the RV's tiny kitchen, scrambled eggs and toast, but I could barely eat. Every few minutes I'd glance out the window checking to see if the trees had moved again. They hadn't, but I could feel them watching, waiting. Marcus suggested we spend the day exploring Devil's Den Cave, the park's main attraction. Under normal circumstances, I would have said no. I've never liked enclosed spaces, but the thought of staying in the RV, watching the forest creep closer, was worse. We drove to the cave entrance around 9. The parking lot was nearly empty, just our RV and an old Subaru with Texas plates. A sign at the trailhead warned visitors to bring flashlights and watch their footing, but otherwise the path looked well maintained. The cave mouth yawned before us, a dark slash in the sandstone about 20 feet wide and 10 feet tall. Cool air flowed from its depths, carrying the smell of wet stone and something else. something organic and rotten, like a tooth abscess or spoiled meat. Second thoughts? Marcus asked, noticing my hesitation. No, I lied again. I was getting good at it. Let's go. The cave was exactly what you'd expect. Slick rock walls, the constant drip of water, formations that looked like frozen waterfalls in the beam of our flashlights. We had to duck in places, and once we had to squeeze through a narrow passage that made my chest tight with claustrophobia. We'd been exploring for maybe 20 minutes when we found the drawings. They covered a section of wall deep in the cave, crude pictographs scratched into the stone with what looked like charcoal or maybe dried blood. Human figures, or at least humanoid ones, surrounding a circle. And inside the circle, a tree with branches that reached in every direction, each one ending in what looked like a hand. Wow, Marcus breathed, running his flashlight over the images. These must be really old. Native American, maybe? We should tell the park rangers. We need to leave, I said suddenly, urgently. The drawings made my skin crawl, triggered something primal in my brain that had no words but screamed danger with every synapse. What? Avery, this is incredible. We should document. Now, Marcus, we need to leave now. He must have heard something in my voice because he didn't argue. We made our way back toward the cave entrance, moving faster than was probably safe on the slick stone. I kept looking over my shoulder, certain I'd see something following us, but there was only darkness and the distant sound of dripping water. We emerged into sunlight that felt like a blessing, and I took deep, greedy breaths of fresh air. Marcus was quiet as we walked back to the RV, but I could feel him watching me with that same concerned expression. Avery, seriously, what's going on? You've been acting strange since we got here. I wanted to tell him, wanted to explain about the trees and the footsteps and the voice that knew my name. But looking at his worried face, I couldn't find the words. How do you tell someone that the forest is alive and malevolent and slowly crushing you to death? How do you explain that reality itself seems to shift when you close your eyes? I think I'm just overtired, I said finally. Maybe we should take it easy this afternoon. Just relax at the campsite. He agreed, and we spent the rest of the day doing exactly that, reading, playing cards, trying to pretend everything was normal. But as the sun began to set and shadows lengthened through the trees, I felt the familiar anxiety building in my chest. The trees were closer again. I'd been watching them all afternoon, had barely blinked, but somehow they'd still moved. The clearing that had been 6 feet in diameter this morning was now maybe 3 feet. The RV was surrounded on all sides, branches scraping against the roof and walls with every breeze. Marcus either couldn't see it or was choosing to ignore it. He built another fire in what little space remained, though he had to position it dangerously close to the RV. We roasted hot dogs and made s'mores, going through the motions of a camping trip that had stopped feeling fun sometime around the second night. Other campers walked past our site occasionally, a bearded man walking a husky, a young couple heading toward the showers. They all seemed to materialize from between the trees, appearing suddenly and disappearing just as quickly. None of them looked at us directly, and when I tried to wave or call out a greeting, they didn't respond. "Did you see that?" I asked Marcus after the third or fourth phantom camper. "See what?" "Those people. They're acting weird." "Avery." Marcus set down his beer with more force than necessary. "I love you, but you're starting to scare me. There haven't been any people walking by. It's just us and the forest." I stared at him, feeling reality crack a little more. Either I was seeing things that weren't there, or he was blind to things that were. Neither option was comforting. "Maybe you're right," I said quietly. "Maybe I should see a doctor when we get back." His expression softened. "Hey, stress can do crazy things to your head. You've been working too hard for too long. We'll get you checked out, make sure everything's okay." He pulled me close. "But I need you to hang in there for one more night, okay? We'll pack up first thing tomorrow and head home." I nodded against his chest, listening to his heartbeat, using it as an anchor to sanity. One more night. I could do that. We stayed by the fire until the wood burned down to embers, then crawled into the RV. Marcus fell asleep quickly, as always, but I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the forest breathe around us. The footsteps started at 2:17 a.m. This time they were faster, more urgent, circling the RV in tighter and tighter loops. I could hear multiple sets now, at least a dozen, all moving in synchronization. And between the footsteps, I heard whispering, not words exactly, but the cadence of conversation, the rise and fall of many voices speaking in unison. I couldn't help it. I had to look. I crept to the window, careful not to wake Marcus, and peered out into the darkness. The trees were touching the RV now, pressed against every side, their bark scraping against the metal and fiberglass. But between the trunks, in the narrow spaces where moonlight penetrated, I saw figures. They were tall and impossibly thin, with limbs that bent at wrong angles and skin that seemed to shift and flow like water. They had faces, or the suggestion of faces, with too many eyes and mouths that opened far too wide, and they were reaching toward the RV with hands that multiplied as I watched, fingers branching into more fingers, each one tipped with something sharp and hungry. As I stood frozen at the window, one of the figures turned to look directly at me. Its eyes, 3 of them, arranged in a triangle, focused on my face, and I felt something cold and alien touch my mind. "Close your eyes, Avery," it said, and its voice was every voice I'd ever heard, layered and echoing. "Close your eyes and let the forest in." "No," I whispered, but I could feel my eyelids growing heavy, feel the overwhelming urge to obey building in my skull like pressure. "Marcus," I said, louder now, reaching for him. "Marcus, wake up." He stirred but didn't wake. I shook him harder, desperate. "Marcus!" His eyes opened slowly, unfocused. "Avery? What? Look!" I practically screamed, pointing at the window. "Look at them. Tell me you see them." He followed my gesture to the window, and for a moment, just a moment, I saw recognition flash across his face. Horror and understanding and terror all mixed together. He saw them. He finally saw them. Then he blinked. When his eyes opened again, they were different. Flat. Wrong. He looked at me with those strange, emotionless eyes, and I knew with complete certainty that whatever was looking out from behind them wasn't my husband anymore. "There's nothing there, Avery," he said, his voice just slightly off, like a recording played at the wrong speed. "You're tired. Close your eyes and rest." I stumbled backward, my shoulder hitting the tiny kitchenette. The thing wearing Marcus's face stood up from the bed, moving with a fluidity that Marcus had never possessed. Outside, the whispering grew louder, more insistent, and I could feel the walls of the RV starting to compress, the ceiling lowering inch by inch. "Stay away from me," I said, grabbing the first thing my hand touched, a heavy flashlight from the counter. Not Marcus tilted his head at an inhuman angle. "The forest wants you to sleep, Avery. It wants you to close your eyes so it can grow closer, so it can embrace you properly." He took a step forward. "Don't you want to be embraced?" I swung the flashlight at his head with all my strength. It connected with a sound like splitting wood, and not Marcus stumbled backward, more surprised than hurt. Black ichor dripped from the wound, thick and viscous, and I could see something moving underneath his skin, something with too many legs. I didn't wait to see what would happen next. I lunged for the RV's door, yanked it open, and threw myself out into the night. I landed hard on ground that wasn't where it should have been, tumbling through dead leaves and sharp rocks. When I looked back, the RV was almost completely swallowed by the forest, trees growing through its walls and roof, branches piercing the metal like fingers through tissue paper. Not Marcus stood in the doorway, backlit by the RV's interior lights, his body starting to come apart at the seams. Through the splits in his skin, I could see the thing underneath, a writhing mass of vegetation and bone, vines and sinew woven together in a mockery of human form. "You can't run, Avery," it said with Marcus's mouth. "You closed your eyes. You let us in. Now we're part of you, and you're part of the forest." I ran. I crashed through underbrush, branches whipping at my face and arms, my bare feet finding every sharp stone and root. Behind me, I could hear them coming. Not just the thing that had been Marcus, but dozens of them, hundreds maybe, moving through the trees with that same wrong fluidity. I had no idea where I was going. The park's trails were invisible in the darkness, and every direction looked the same. Just more trees, more shadows, more whispered promises to close my eyes and let it end. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs screamed, until I tasted blood in my mouth and felt warm streams running down my face from a dozen cuts. I ran until I couldn't run anymore, and then I collapsed against a massive oak tree, gasping for breath. The whispers surrounded me immediately, coming from the trees themselves, from the soil beneath my feet, from the air in my lungs. Close your eyes. Let the forest in. Sleep, Avery. Sleep and dream of roots and darkness. I clamped my eyes open, refusing to blink even as they watered and stung. Around me, the figures emerged from between the trees, dozens of them, all reaching toward me with their branching hands. That's when I saw the light. It came from my left, a flickering glow that could only be fire. I forced my exhausted body to move toward it, praying it was real and not another hallucination. The light grew brighter, and I stumbled into a clearing where a campfire burned. Doris, the elderly campground host, sat beside it on a folding chair, feeding sticks into the flames as casually as if it were noon on a Sunday. She looked up as I crashed into the clearing, taking in my bloody feet, torn pajamas, and wild eyes without surprise. "Wondered when you'd show up," she said. I collapsed at the edge of the firelight, still trying to catch my breath. What are they?" "The forest," Doris said simply. Or what the forest became anyway. Something old and hungry that learned how to wear human skin. Been here since before the park, before the settlers, before the natives even. Just waiting for people stupid enough to close their eyes and let it in. "Marcus," I gasped. "My husband. It took him. It's wearing him." "Your husband's gone, dear. What's left is just meat and memory the forest is using to hunt you." She poked at the fire with a stick. "The trees move when you're not looking, you know. When you close your eyes, when you blink, when you turn away. That's how it gets closer. That's how it takes you. How do I stop it?" Doris laughed, a sound like cracking wood. "Stop it? Honey, you don't stop the forest. You survive it, if you're lucky. You keep your eyes open and you get the hell out before it gets close enough to touch you." She fixed me with those deep-set eyes. "The fire keeps them back, but only till dawn. Once the sun comes up, you run for the main road and you don't look back. You don't close your eyes, not even to blink if you can help it, and you pray they don't catch you before you reach pavement. Why are you helping me? Because I was stupid once too. Came here with my husband 43 years ago, back when this place wasn't even a proper park yet." Her face hardened. "The forest took him on our second night. Wore his skin for 3 days before I figured out what had happened. I've been here ever since, trying to warn people, trying to keep the really stupid ones alive." She gestured at the darkness beyond the firelight. "Most don't listen. Most close their eyes." We sat in silence for a while, listening to the whispers that never quite stopped, watching the figures that circled just beyond the light's reach. I could see Marcus among them now, or the thing pretending to be Marcus, standing motionless between two trees, his head cocked at that wrong angle, watching me with eyes that reflected the firelight like an animal's. "I loved him," I said quietly. "I know," Doris replied. "That's what makes it worse." Dawn came slowly, the sky lightening degree by degree until the figures began to fade back into the trees. Not Marcus was the last to go, standing there until the moment before sunrise, then simply stepping backward and disappearing into the oak's trunk as if it were made of water. "Go," Doris said. "Now, while the light is strong. Follow the path behind me. It leads to the main road, and whatever you do—" "Don't close my eyes," I finished. She nodded. "The forest is always hungry, girl, and it has a long memory." I ran. My feet, already torn and bloody, left prints on the trail as I sprinted toward freedom. The path seemed to stretch forever, winding through trees that leaned in close, branches grabbing at my hair and clothes. I could feel them trying to slow me down, trying to make me stumble and fall and close my eyes for just a second. But I kept them open. Even when they burned and watered, even when dust and insects flew at them, I kept them open. The forest seemed to sense my determination because it began to change tactics. I started seeing things. Marcus standing beside the path, whole and healthy, calling my name. My mother, who'd died 5 years ago, waving at me from behind a tree. My childhood dog, tail wagging, begging me to stop and pet him. I ignored them all and kept running. The trees grew thinner, the canopy opening up to let in more light. I could hear traffic now, the distant sound of cars on pavement, the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. Then I saw it. The park entrance, the main road just beyond. A woman in a minivan pumping gas at the small station across the street. Civilization. Safety. Survival. I burst from the tree line like a swimmer breaking the surface after nearly drowning, and the morning sun on my face felt like a blessing. The woman at the gas station screamed when she saw me, covered in blood and dirt, wearing torn pajamas, my eyes wild and bloodshot, and she grabbed her phone to call 911. I wanted to tell her not to bother, that whatever was wrong with me couldn't be fixed by paramedics or police. But instead, I just collapsed on the warm pavement and stared up at the sky, forcing myself to keep my eyes open even as exhaustion threatened to drag them closed. The police came. The paramedics came. They wrapped me in blankets and asked questions I couldn't answer coherently. They searched Devil's Den for Marcus and the RV and found nothing. No campsite, no vehicle, no evidence we'd ever been there except for my car keys in my pocket. They found Doris, though, dead. She'd been dead for 43 years, according to park records, killed in a camping accident in 1982 along with her husband, Gerald. Their bodies were never recovered. They kept me in the hospital for 3 days, running tests, evaluating me for psychiatric holds. The official conclusion was a psychotic break triggered by stress and sleep deprivation. They gave me medication and recommended extensive therapy. They had my brother drive down from Fayetteville to take me home. I let them believe what they wanted. It was easier than the truth. That was 6 months ago. I still live in Little Rock, but I had to move out of the house Marcus and I shared. Too many memories. Too much pain. I'm on medical leave from the hospital. My hands shake too badly to work in the ER anymore. I see a therapist twice a week who specializes in trauma and grief. She's helping, I think. Or at least she's helping me pretend to be functional. I don't sleep much anymore. When I do, I dream of trees and whispers and Marcus's face splitting open to reveal the thing underneath. I wake up gasping, checking to make sure my eyes are open, making sure the walls of my apartment haven't moved closer. Because here's the thing they don't tell you about surviving. You never really escape. The forest may be hours away, but I still feel it watching, waiting. Sometimes, late at night, I hear footsteps circling my apartment building. Sometimes I catch movement in my peripheral vision. Something tall and thin, with too many joints. And sometimes, when I'm very tired, I see Marcus. Not the thing that wore his face, but the real Marcus, the man I loved, standing in the corner of my bedroom, transparent as glass. He doesn't speak, just watches me with sad eyes, and I wonder if he's trying to warn me or if he's already part of whatever took him. The worst part? I have to keep blinking. I have to close my eyes eventually for just a moment, just a second. And every time I do, I feel the world shift slightly, feel reality adjust itself in that instant of darkness. The trees are moving closer. Not the physical trees outside my window. Those stay right where they are. But the forest itself, the thing that lives in Devil's Den and knows my name, it's growing, spreading, finding new ways to reach me. Last week I went to my car and found acorns scattered across the hood, the same kind that grew on the oak tree outside our RV. There are no oak trees in my apartment complex's parking lot. Yesterday, I found a drawing slipped under my door, crude pictographs of human figures surrounding a tree with branches that end in hands. The same drawing from the cave. Today, I looked out my window and saw Doris standing on the sidewalk below, staring up at me with those deep-set eyes. As I watched, she smiled and then stepped backward into the shadow of a building, disappearing as if the concrete were made of water. I know what it means. The forest is coming for me. It followed me home. patient and relentless, because I closed my eyes and let it in, because I blinked in Devil's Den, and in that moment of darkness, I became part of it. My therapist says I'm making progress. My medication is helping with the visual disturbances. My brother calls every day to check on me. They all think I'm healing, but I know the truth. You can't heal from being hunted. You can't escape from something that lives in the space between one blink and the next. Tonight, as I sit here writing this, I can hear whispers through my apartment walls. I can see shadows moving in ways shadows shouldn't move. And when I close my eyes, when I have to close them, just for a moment, I feel the forest growing closer. The trees are moving, patient and inevitable. And I'm so tired of keeping my eyes open. I'm Avery, 34. I closed my eyes at Devil's Den State Park in Arkansas, and the forest moved closer. It's still moving. And sooner or later, I'm going to have to sleep.
Story 2. I'm Jonathan. I'm 34. The path at Devil's Garden in the Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument bent into a circle around me. I'd driven my 1998 Winnebago Brave, a beast I'd bought off Craigslist for $8,000, all the way from Portland to southern Utah because my therapist said I needed solitude. After the divorce, after losing the house, after Emily took our daughter Chloe 3 states away, I needed to disappear into somewhere vast and empty. Devil's Garden seemed appropriate. The name felt honest. The ranger station sat abandoned when I arrived on a Tuesday afternoon in late September. A handwritten sign taped to the window read, "Closed for season, emergency contact, 435-826-5499. I tried the number. It rang 18 times before disconnecting. The parking area held only my RV and a rusted-out Subaru with 4 flat tires that looked like it had been there since the Obama administration. I chose a dispersed camping spot about 2 miles down a dirt road that forked off the main route. The landscape was otherworldly, hoodoos rising like petrified giants, slot canyons cutting through burnt orange stone, and juniper trees twisted into arthritic shapes by centuries of wind. My spot overlooked a shallow wash where water had carved serpentine patterns into the sandstone. The first night passed without incident. I made instant ramen on my camp stove, drank 2 beers, and watched the Milky Way emerge like a scar across the sky. My phone had no signal, which was exactly what I wanted. I fell asleep to the sound of wind whistling through the hoodoos. I woke at 3:47 a.m. to my RV shaking. At first, I thought it was wind, but the air outside was perfectly still. The shaking intensified, rhythmic, purposeful. I grabbed my flashlight and checked outside. Nothing. No animals, no vehicles, no people. Just endless darkness broken by the skeletal shadows of junipers. When I climbed back into the RV, I noticed something wrong with my map. I'd left it spread across the dinette table, weighted down with my coffee mug. Now it was folded differently. Not just folded, refolded in a way I'd never folded it, with the Devil's Garden section facing up and a red circle drawn around my camping spot. I hadn't brought a red pen. I hadn't drawn any circles. My hands shook as I examined the map. The circle was perfect, too perfect to be hand-drawn. Inside it, someone had written in tiny, precise letters, Day 1. I checked the door locks, both secure. I checked the windows, all closed. I'd been alone. Sleep came in fractured pieces after that. Every creak of the RV settling, every whisper of wind, every tick of cooling metal sent adrenaline spiking through my system. By the time dawn light turned the hoodoos pink, I'd convinced myself I'd drawn the circle and forgotten. Stress did strange things to memory. My therapist had warned me about dissociative episodes. I made coffee and decided to hike the Devil's Garden Loop, a 5-mile trail that wound through the park's most dramatic formations. Exercise would clear my head. Physical exhaustion would help me sleep tonight. The trail was well marked at first. Cairns every 100 feet, occasional wooden posts with arrows carved into them. The September heat hadn't arrived yet, and the morning air tasted like dust and sage. I passed between hoodoos that looked like chess pieces from a game played by gods. I photographed a natural arch, then an alcove filled with pictographs, handprints, and spirals left by people who'd vanished centuries ago. At the 2-mile mark, I encountered the first cairn that didn't match the others. The trail cairns were 4 or 5 stones stacked neatly. This one was different. 13 stones balanced in a precarious tower, with small twigs inserted between each rock. It stood directly in the path, impossible to miss. I circled it, trying to understand why someone would build something so elaborate. The stones weren't from the immediate area. They were river rocks, smooth and dark, carried in from somewhere else. I took a photo and kept walking. The trail began to curve. Not the gentle curves marked on my map, but a sharper arc that didn't feel right. I checked my compass. North was north, but the trail was bending in a way that should have pointed me back toward the parking area, yet I could see the hoodoos I'd passed earlier now appearing ahead of me, not behind. I stopped, pulled out my map, tried to orient myself using the rock formations. The map had changed again. The trail on the map, the Devil's Garden loop that should be a neat circle, was now drawn as a spiral. The red circle around my camp had moved. It was now positioned at what appeared to be the center of the spiral, and someone had added text in that same tiny handwriting. Day 1. He walks in circles. He doesn't know yet. I spun around. The trail behind me looked exactly like the trail ahead of me. Same curve, same hoodoos in the distance, same scattered juniper trees. I pulled out my phone to check the GPS, forgetting there was no signal. The screen showed my location as a blinking blue dot in a gray void of no map data available. I decided to backtrack. I'd been hiking for 90 minutes. It should take 90 minutes to return. I walked faster than I had coming in, keeping the sun on my left where it had been on my right before. The formations passed by. I recognized nothing and everything. Every hoodoo looked like every other hoodoo. Every juniper tree could have been any juniper tree. After 40 minutes, I found the 13-stone cairn again. I knew it was the same one because of the twigs, the specific pattern, but I'd been walking in the opposite direction. I couldn't have circled back to it unless the trail was a loop, unless I'd gotten turned around. I marked the cairn with my bandana, tying the blue cloth around the top stone, and continued walking. I counted my steps. I counted minutes. I stayed focused on moving in a straight line relative to the sun. After exactly 33 minutes, I found the cairn again. My bandana fluttered in a breeze I couldn't feel. I stood there, breathing hard, heart hammering against my ribs. This wasn't possible. I'd walked in a straight line. The sun hadn't moved. I grabbed the bandana and tied it to my belt loop, then used my knife to carve an arrow into the sandstone next to the cairn, pointing in the direction I planned to walk. This time I didn't count. I walked fast, almost running, desperate to break out of whatever navigational error I was caught in. The hoodoos blurred past. My breath came in ragged gasps. The dry air scraped my throat raw. I found the cairn again. The arrow I'd carved pointed directly at me. I'd carved it 20 minutes ago. I'd walked in the direction it indicated. I should have been miles away, but I was standing at the exact same spot, and my arrow, my fresh carving still showing bright orange stone beneath the desert varnish, pointed at me like an accusation. I kicked the cairn. Stones scattered. I stood there among the debris, chest heaving, trying not to scream. Then I noticed something I'd missed before. Around the destroyed cairn, barely visible in the dirt, was a perfect circle of small stones. They ringed the entire area in a perimeter about 20 feet across. I walked to the edge and saw that they continued, each stone 6 inches from the next, forming an unbroken boundary. I stepped over the stones. The trail ahead looked different, older. The cairns I'd been following were gone. The wooden trail markers had vanished. Even the character of the landscape had changed. The hoodoos seemed taller, darker, leaning inward. The sky had taken on a gray-green tinge like old bruises. I checked my watch. 2:47 p.m. I'd started hiking at 8:30 a.m. 6 hours circling a cairn that shouldn't exist. I walked. I didn't care about direction anymore. I just needed to find my RV, find the road, find anything human and real. The landscape revealed nothing familiar. The wash I'd camped near was nowhere in sight. The distant cliffs didn't match the formations I'd photographed that morning. As the sun began its descent, I saw my RV. It sat at the bottom of a shallow basin, my camp set up exactly as I'd left it. Chair positioned beside the door, camp stove on the picnic table, solar panel deployed on the roof. Relief flooded through me so intensely I nearly collapsed. I ran down the slope, stumbling over rocks, not caring that I was kicking up dust and sliding on loose scree. I reached the RV and yanked the door open. Everything was wrong. The interior was my RV. Same layout, same water stains on the ceiling, same curtains I'd hung myself, but everything was positioned in mirror image. The dinette was on the left instead of the right. The bed was on the right instead of the left. The small bathroom was on the opposite side. I backed out, circled the vehicle. Same make and model. Same license plate, my Oregon plates. Same dent on the rear bumper from where I'd backed into a pole at a gas station in Nevada. But when I looked inside again, the mirror image remained. I checked my map on the table. It had changed again. Now it showed an impossible pattern. The trail formed a series of concentric circles, each one labeled with day and a number. I was on day 1. The circles went up to day 40. Under the map, I found a spiral notebook I'd never seen before. The handwriting inside was mine, my exact handwriting, the way I formed my letters, the specific slant and pressure. But I hadn't written these words. Day 1, arrived, felt like I'd been here before. Day 2, the trail loops. I can't find the road. Day 3, saw someone who looked like me in the distance. Day 4, the RV is different now. Everything is reversed. Day 5, something is living under the RV at night. The entries continued through day 39. The final entry read, Day 40. I understand now. The circle demands time. Tomorrow I'll be complete, and the next one will arrive. I was him once. He'll be me soon. The path bends and bends and bends until there's no beginning, no end, just the walking. I threw the notebook. It landed near the campfire ring, pages fluttering in wind that still hadn't started. I needed to think. I needed to be rational. Stress, dehydration, altitude. There were explanations. I'd driven too long, slept too little. My mind was constructing elaborate delusions to process the trauma of my divorce. I drank water. I ate an energy bar. I sat in my camp chair and forced myself to breathe slowly. The sun touched the horizon, painting the hoodoo's blood red. That's when I saw him. A figure stood on the ridge above my camp, too far to see features, but something about the posture was familiar. The way he stood with weight on his left leg, the way his shoulders slumped. After a moment, he descended toward me. As he got closer, my blood turned to ice water. He looked exactly like me. Same height, same build, same flannel shirt I was wearing, same hiking boots, same wedding ring I couldn't bring myself to remove. He stopped about 30 feet away. His face was mine, but different. Older, weathered, with deep lines around the eyes and mouth that I didn't have yet. He smiled, and it was the saddest smile I'd ever seen. Day 1, he said. His voice was my voice, but rougher, damaged. You don't believe it yet. That's normal. I stood up, my chair falling backward. Who are you? You know who I am. You're just not ready to accept it. This is a breakdown. I'm having a breakdown. He shook his head. You're perfectly sane. That's the worst part. You'll stay sane through all 40 days, watching yourself disappear into the circle. What circle? The trail. The path. It bends and bends and bends. You walked into it this morning when you crossed the stone boundary. Now you're caught in the loop. You'll walk it 40 times, 40 days, and each day you'll understand a little more. Each day you'll lose a little more of who you were. That's insane. Yes, he agreed, but it's also true. Check your phone. I pulled out my phone. The date said September 28th. I'd arrived on September 27th. That was correct. 1 day had passed, but the year had changed. It now read 2026. 1 year and 1 day had passed. That's not possible. The circle doesn't follow normal time. Each day you walk the trail, you age. Your body ages, your mind ages, but the world outside stays frozen. By day 40 you'll be old, you'll be tired, and you'll understand why the circle needs what it needs. What does it need? He didn't answer. Instead, he turned and walked back up the ridge. I followed, shouting after him, demanding answers, but he disappeared into the maze of hoodoos. I ran after him, searching, but found only more twisted landscape and the growing darkness of night. When I returned to camp, I found fresh tracks around my RV. Footprints in the dust, same size as mine, circling the vehicle repeatedly. I counted 23 complete circles before they ended at the exact spot where I'd been standing. I locked myself in the RV. I pushed the dinette table against the door. I sat in the mirror image interior with all the lights on, listening to the silence outside. Hours passed. The wind never came. The temperature never dropped. The darkness beyond the windows was absolute. At 3:47 a.m., the RV began to shake again. This time I didn't check outside. I sat rigid in my seat, hands gripping the table edge, watching the walls vibrate. The shaking lasted exactly 4 minutes, then stopped. In the sudden silence, I heard humming. Someone was humming outside, a tuneless, repetitive sound that might have been a song once but had degraded into something mechanical. I recognized it after a moment. It was Chloe's lullaby, the song I used to sing to my daughter before bed. I hadn't sung it in months. Nobody else knew that song. The humming circled the RV. I tracked it by sound, hearing it pass the driver's side, the rear, the passenger side, the front. 7 complete circles before it stopped at my door. 3 knocks. Jonathan. My voice from outside. I need to show you something. I didn't answer. You'll need to see it eventually. Might as well be tonight. Go away. I can't go away, I'm you. I'm what you become. The only difference is I've already walked the 40 days, you're just starting. What happens on day 40? Silence. Then, You complete the circle, you become the path, and then you wait for the next one to arrive. The next what? The next you. The next person who needs solitude, who drives too far, who camps in the wrong place. The circle is hungry. It's always hungry. It feeds on time, on potential, on all the futures you might have had. By day 40, you won't have any future left. You'll just be a marker on the trail, waiting to guide the next walker. I looked at the notebook I'd thrown earlier. Through the window, I could see it lying open near the fire ring, pages glowing faintly in starlight that shouldn't have been bright enough to illuminate anything. I'm leaving, I said. I'm driving out of here. Try it, said my voice. I did. Everyone does. I moved the table, unlocked the door, and climbed into the driver's seat. The keys were in the ignition where I'd left them. I turned them. The engine turned over, coughed and caught. Relief flooded through me. I turned on the headlights. The figure stood directly in front of the RV, illuminated in the high beams. Me, 40 days older, smiling that sad smile. I put the vehicle in drive and pressed the gas. The RV moved forward. The figure didn't move. I kept driving, accelerating, heading straight for him. He raised one hand in a wave. The RV jolted. Everything went dark for a moment. Not just the lights, but consciousness itself, like someone had switched me off and on again. When I could see again, I was back at my campsite, engine running, headlights on, pointed at empty darkness. According to the clock, no time had passed, but the odometer had rolled forward 147 miles. I'd driven 147 miles and ended up exactly where I started. I turned off the engine. I sat in the dark cab, hands on the wheel, understanding settling into my bones like poison. I was trapped. The circle had me. Day 2 began with sunrise that came too fast, like someone had skipped hours of night. I checked the notebook again. New text had appeared in my handwriting. Day 2. Tried to drive away. Can't leave the circle. The path bends back on itself. All roads lead here. I hadn't written that. I'd been in the RV all night, but the handwriting was mine. I needed to understand what was happening. I needed to map the boundary of this trap. I gathered supplies. Water, energy bars, my compass, knife, and the map that kept changing. I marked my camp with a cairn of white stones so I could identify it from a distance. Then I walked. I chose what I thought was east based on the sun. I walked for 6 hours, maintaining a straight line as much as the terrain allowed. I should have covered 15 miles. Instead, at hour 6, I crested a rise and saw my camp below me, my white cairn marking the spot. I'd walked in a perfect circle. I tried northwest. Same result. Southwest. Same result. No matter which direction I walked, I always returned to camp after roughly 6 hours. The landscape seemed infinite, but it was all folding back on itself, trapping me in a bubble of space that looked limitless, but wasn't. On day 3, I found the others. I'd been exploring a slot canyon near camp when I saw footprints in the sand. Fresh prints, same size as mine, heading deeper into the canyon. I followed them. The canyon opened into a small amphitheater ringed by vertical stone walls. In the center, someone had built a structure from dead wood and stones. Crude walls, no roof, just a rectangle about 6 feet by 10 feet. Inside the structure, I found belongings, a backpack, a sleeping bag, a journal. The journal belonged to Thomas Merritt, according to the name written inside. His entries began exactly like mine. Day 1, arrived at Devil's Garden. Beautiful place, feels ancient. Day 2, something's wrong with the trails, keep looping back. Day 3, met someone who looks like me. His entries went to day 40. The final entry was brief. It's time. The circle is complete. I understand now. I am the path. I am the loop. I wait for the next walker. I found 6 more structures scattered through the canyons. 6 more journals. 6 more sets of belongings. All men. All between 30 and 45 years old. All camping alone. All trapped in the same 40-day cycle. The oldest journal dated back to 1973. The most recent was from 2023. They'd all written the same observations, walked the same circular paths, met versions of themselves aged by the circle's warping of time. None of them had escaped. On day 7, I encountered 3 versions of myself simultaneously. I'd been walking the trail again, always walking because sitting still felt like drowning, when I saw them standing together in conference. All me. One looked about 50, weathered and thin. One looked ancient, barely able to stand, supported by a walking stick. The third looked maybe 40, still strong but marked by exhaustion. Day 7, said the 40-year-old version. I remember this. We all remember this, said the ancient one. His voice was my voice filtered through decades of screaming. This is when he starts to break. I'm not breaking, I said. The 50-year-old laughed. You're already broken. You broke the moment you drove through the boundary stones at the park entrance. You just don't know you're broken yet. What are you? We're you, said the Ancient One. We're all you. Everyone who's been caught in the circle becomes part of it. We're echoes, repeating, walking the path forever. By day 40, you'll join us. You'll become another echo, another loop in the spiral. There has to be a way out. There isn't, said the 50-year-old. We've tried everything. We've tried walking until our feet bled. We've tried not walking, staying still, refusing to participate. It doesn't matter. The circle pulls you forward. Each day you age. Each day you lose something, memory, hope, identity. By day 40, you won't want to leave. You'll understand that you are the circle. You are the trap. Why? I asked. What's the purpose? The ancient version stepped closer. His face was a ruin of wrinkles and sun damage, but his eyes, my eyes, still held recognition. The land here is old. The people who lived here before understood it. They built the boundaries, the stone circles, the markers. They knew that some places are hungry. Some places need to be fed. Time is food. Potential futures are food. The circle eats them and uses them to sustain itself. That's insane. Yes, he agreed, but you'll understand soon. You're already starting to forget your life before. Emily's face is getting blurry, isn't it? Chloe's laugh sounds distant. The divorce, the house, the reasons you came here, they're fading. By day 20, you won't remember them at all. By day 40, you'll only remember the circle. He was right. I tried to picture Emily and saw only generic features. I tried to remember Chloe's voice and heard only approximations. My old life was already becoming someone else's story. The three versions of me walked away in different directions, each disappearing into the landscape. I stood alone in the exact spot where I'd first seen them, and I realized the ground beneath my feet was wearing away. The stone was smoother here, polished by centuries of repeated footsteps. This was part of the path, part of the eternal loop. On day 13, I stopped eating, not intentionally. I simply forgot. The RV had food, canned goods, dry pasta, energy bars, but the idea of eating seemed foreign. My body continued walking the trails, mapping the same loops, finding the same cairns, but the basic necessities of survival felt increasingly irrelevant. I no longer felt hunger. I no longer felt thirst. I walked under the desert sun for hours without sweating. My watch stopped working, the hands frozen at 3:47. My phone's battery never died, but the screen showed only the date advancing, October, November, December. On day 19th, I met her. She was sitting at my campsite when I returned from another circular hike, young, maybe 25, with dark hair in a braid and a backpack beside her. She looked up as I approached, and her face showed the same confusion and fear I remembered feeling weeks ago. "Are you the ranger?" she asked. "I'm lost. I've been walking for hours and I keep ending up back here." I almost laughed. I almost told her the truth. Instead, I said, "What day is it?" "What? It's September 27th, Tuesday. Are you okay?" September 27th, day 1 for her. The same day I'd arrived, the circle had caught someone new. I looked at her more carefully. She had my nervous energy, my way of standing with weight on her left leg, my tendency to chew her lower lip when anxious. She was me, but female, but somehow still me. "You need to leave," I said. "I'm trying. I've been trying all day. The trails just loop back. My GPS isn't working. My phone has no signal. I saw another campsite, but it was exactly like mine, and then I found this one and—" She stopped, really seeing me for the first time. "You look sick. Do you need help?" I caught my reflection in my RV's side mirror. I'd avoided mirrors for days, but now I saw what she saw. I'd aged. My face was gaunt, skin hanging loose on my skull. My hair had gone gray. I looked 60 years old. "Day 19, I whispered. "What? You're on day 1. I'm on day 19. In 21 more days, you'll look like I do now. In 40 days, you'll become the circle." She backed away from me. "You're crazy. Check your map. Really check it. Look at how the trails are drawn." She pulled out her map with shaking hands. I watched her face as she registered the changes, the spiral pattern, the red circle, the notation in handwriting that looked like hers but couldn't be. "This isn't... The circle changes everything. You walked past the boundary stones. You're caught now. The only way out is through. 40 days of walking the same paths, aging, losing yourself, until you become part of the trap that catches the next person." She ran. I let her go. I remembered running. It didn't help. By day 2, she'd understand. By day 10, she'd accept. By day 40, she'd be waiting at camp to greet the next arrival, just like the ancient version of me had greeted me. On day 27, I stopped being able to distinguish between different versions of myself. The trails were crowded now. Everywhere I walked, I encountered myself at different ages: young me, old me, ancient me, dying me. We passed each other without speaking. We all knew the path, we all knew what was coming. The campsite had multiplied too. Every evening I returned to find my RV. But now there were other RVs nearby. Dozens of them, all identical, all occupied by versions of people who'd been caught over the years. At night, we sat at our separate fires, not speaking, just waiting for the next day to come. I found the girl again on what I thought was day 31. She'd aged rapidly. She looked 50, her face carved by stress and despair. She didn't recognize me. I didn't try to remind her. We were all the same here anyway, just echoes walking circular paths. On day 38, I found the center. I'd been walking what felt like an outward spiral, moving away from camp, when the landscape shifted. The hoodoos opened into a perfect circular clearing about 100 feet across. In the center was a stone platform, and on the platform was a cairn unlike any I'd seen. Hundreds of stones stacked impossibly high, bound together with something that looked like dried blood. Around the clearing's perimeter stood figures. All the people who'd been caught. All the versions of myself and others across all the days. We formed a living boundary, our bodies marking the edge of the circle. I understood then. We weren't trapped in the circle. We had become the circle. Every person caught here added their time, their potential, their future selves to the structure. We were the boundary stones. We were the path. We were the trap that caught the next person. On day 39, I returned to my campsite and found the woman I would become. She was ancient beyond measure, barely human anymore, more like a piece of the landscape that had learned to stand upright. She sat in my camp chair, and when she looked at me, I saw infinite loops reflected in her eyes. "Tomorrow," she said in a voice like wind through stone. "Tomorrow I complete the circle. Yes, what happens after? You wait, you guide. You become the path. The next person who needs solitude will find their way here. You'll greet them, you'll tell them about day one, and the cycle continues. Forever, the circle has no end." I looked at my RV. In the mirror image interior, I could see through the window to the notebook on the table. It was filled now with 40 days of entries, all in my handwriting, all documenting the same journey everyone had taken. "There must be a way to break it," I said. The ancient woman, the ancient me, smiled. "There is, but you won't take it." "Tell me." "The circle feeds on time. It needs the 40 days. If you refuse to walk on day 40, if you choose to end yourself before completing the cycle, the circle weakens. Do that enough times, 10, 20, 50 times, and eventually the boundary stones lose their power. The trap fails. But I would die. This version of you would die. But you're already dead, Jonathan. You died the moment you drove past the stones. Everything after has been echo. If you refuse to become the path, you deny the circle its food. That's the only way to save the next person." I thought about Emily. I could barely remember her face now. I thought about Chloe. Her voice was gone from my memory. I thought about everyone I'd been before I came here. "I don't want to die," I said. "No one does. That's why the circle never breaks. That's why it's been here for centuries, feeding, growing, catching everyone who seeks solitude in the wrong place." She stood slowly, joints crackling like breaking stone. "Make your choice tomorrow. Walk day 40 and join us, or refuse and break one link in an infinite chain. Either way, I'll still be here. Some version of you will always be here." She walked away into the darkness, and I was alone. Day 40 began with sunrise that felt like judgment. I woke in my RV knowing this was the end. Today I would either complete the circle and become part of the trap, or I would choose the other way. The ancient me had made it sound simple, but it wasn't. Choosing to die, truly die, not just age and echo, meant giving up every possibility that remained. I walked to the stone platform one last time. The cairn stood waiting, wrapped in dried blood and time. Around me the echoes gathered, all the people who'd been caught, all the versions of myself at different ages. We formed concentric rings around the center. The youngest version of me, day one me still holding hope, stood closest to the platform. The oldest versions formed the outer rings, barely human anymore, just suggestions of people worn down to essential shapes by centuries of walking the same paths. "Join us," they said in unison. My voice multiplied by hundreds. "Complete the circle." I looked at them, at me, at us, and saw the truth. This wasn't survival. This wasn't even existence. It was just repetition, loop after loop after loop, forever catching the next person who needed what I needed. Solitude, escape, forgetting. I thought about Emily finding someone new. I thought about Chloe growing up without me. I thought about all the futures I'd lost by coming here. Then I thought about the next person, the next Jonathan or whoever would drive down that dirt road seeking quiet. They would find the boundary stones. They would cross them. They would walk day 1, day 2, day 40. They would stand where I stood now, facing the same choice, unless someone broke the pattern. I turned away from the platform. The echoes gasped, a sound like wind through 1,000 throats. "Don't," said the ancient me. "You can't break it. The circle is eternal." "Maybe," I said, "but at least I won't add to it." I walked back to my RV. I found my sleeping pills in the medicine cabinet, the ones my doctor prescribed after the divorce when sleep became impossible. I'd brought the whole bottle thinking I might need them out here. I did need them, just not the way I'd thought. I poured them into my hand, enough to stop time, at least my time, enough to refuse the circle its 40-day meal. The echoes surrounded my RV, pressing against the windows, my faces at every age staring in, pleading, angry, desperate. They needed me to complete the cycle. They needed the circle to continue. I thought about Chloe one last time. Her face came back to me then, really came back. Not the blur I'd been seeing, but her actual face, gap-toothed and smiling, calling Daddy when I picked her up from school. I'd lost so much time with her. I'd lost so much of everything. But maybe someone else wouldn't. I swallowed the pills. All of them. The echoes screamed. The RV shook. The circle fought, tried to reverse time, tried to undo what I'd done. But I'd broken the pattern. I'd refused day 40. As consciousness faded, I saw the boundary stones begin to crack, just barely, just slightly, but enough. One refusal in thousands of years of walking, not enough to break the circle completely, but enough to weaken it. Maybe the next person would refuse too. Maybe eventually enough people would choose to end rather than echo, and the circle would starve. My last thought was a hope, that someone would find this place and leave, that someone would see the boundary stones and turn back, that someone would learn from what I'd done. The darkness came soft as desert sand. They found my RV 3 weeks later, November 2025. The ranger who opened the door found my body in the bunk, peaceful, surrounded by scattered pill bottles. My notebook lay open on the table, filled with 40 days of entries in handwriting that changed from page to page, growing older, more desperate, finally barely legible. The ranger noted the date of death as September 27th, based on the last entry in the notebook. He noted the cause as apparent suicide. He noted the bizarre circular wear patterns on the ground around the RV, like someone had walked the same circuit thousands of times. He didn't note the cracks in the boundary stones at the park entrance. He didn't note how the trails seemed to straighten when he walked them, no longer looping back on themselves. He didn't note that Devil's Garden felt different somehow, less hungry, less aware. He didn't note any of this because he didn't know what to look for. But when the next person arrived seeking solitude, a woman named Sarah, 42, running from a failed business and broken marriage, she stopped at the boundary stones. Something about them made her skin crawl. The cracks in them seemed to pulse with warning. She turned her car around. She found a different place to camp, somewhere with rangers and other people and the comfortable sounds of human presence. She never knew what she'd avoided. She never knew about the circle or the 40 days or the man who'd chosen to break pattern. But she was free. And somewhere in the desert, in the spaces between stones and silence, the echo of my choice rippled outward, making the trap just a little bit weaker, just a little less eternal. The circle bent and bent and bent. But for the first time in centuries, it didn't quite close. Story 3. I'm Elizabeth, 34 years old. I woke up at Ocala National Forest with dirt in my mouth. That's not how the trip was supposed to start. Nothing about that week in North Central Florida was supposed to go the way it did, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning, when the 4 of us were still whole, still human, still believed that the worst thing that could happen in the woods was a flat tire or a bear getting into our coolers. My husband Marcus and I had planned the RV trip for months. We'd rented a 30-foot Winnebago, the kind with the pop-out sides that made it feel almost like a real home. Marcus was 41, a software engineer who spent too much time hunched over keyboards and not enough time in sunlight. The trip was supposed to be his detox from screens, his chance to remember what fresh air tasted like. He'd been different lately, quieter, more withdrawn, staring at his laptop until 3 in the morning with the intensity that worried me. I thought nature would fix whatever was breaking inside him. We'd invited another couple, Jenna and Paul Reeves. Jenna had been my college roommate, the kind of friend who knew all your embarrassing stories and loved you anyway. She was 33, taught high school English, had a laugh that sounded like wind chimes. Paul was 37, worked in insurance, and had the kind of steady, unflappable demeanor that made you feel safe. They'd been married 6 years, and their relationship had that comfortable ease that Marcus and I were still trying to cultivate. We met at the ranger station just outside Ocala National Forest on a Tuesday in late September. The heat was oppressive, that thick Florida humidity that makes your clothes stick to your skin within minutes. The ranger who checked us in was an older woman named Carol, maybe 60, with sun-damaged skin and eyes that seemed to look right through you. "Y'all staying at the dispersed camping area near Juniper Springs?" she asked, marking something on a map. "That's the plan," Marcus said, accepting the map. "We want to be away from the main campgrounds, get some real solitude." Carol's expression shifted, something I couldn't quite read. "That area can be unpredictable, especially this time of year." "Unpredictable how?" Jenna asked. "Wildlife, weather. Sometimes people go out there and come back saying they heard things, saw things." She shrugged, but her discomfort was obvious. "Probably just the isolation playing tricks, but I'd recommend staying closer to the maintained sites." Paul laughed, that easy confidence of his coming through. "We'll be fine. We've got 4 adults, a fully stocked RV, and cell phones. What could go wrong?" Carol stamped our permit but didn't smile. "Just, if anything feels off, trust your gut. Leave. Don't wait around trying to rationalize it." We should have listened. The drive into the forest was beautiful in that wild, untamed way that only Florida wilderness can be. Massive live oaks draped with Spanish moss formed tunnels over the dirt roads. Palmetto scrub stretched for miles, broken occasionally by sinkholes that dropped into underground rivers. The sunlight came through the canopy in shafts of gold, and I remember thinking this was exactly what we needed. Distance from civilization, from obligations, from whatever darkness had been creeping into Marcus's eyes at night. We found our spot around 4 in the afternoon, a clearing maybe 50 yards from the road, surrounded on 3 sides by dense pine forest. A small creek ran nearby, the water dark with tannins but clear when you looked close. Perfect. Setting up took an hour. Marcus and Paul extended the pop-outs and hooked up the generator while Jenna and I arranged the interior and prepared dinner supplies. The RV had 2 sleeping areas, a queen bed in the back that Marcus and I would take, and a convertible dinette that Paul and Jenna would use. There was a tiny bathroom with a shower, a kitchenette, and just enough space to not feel cramped. That first night was perfect. We grilled steaks outside, drank wine, told stories around a campfire Paul built. The darkness around us was absolute, no light pollution this deep in the forest. The stars were extraordinary, so many you couldn't pick out individual constellations, just a river of light spilled across black velvet. "This is exactly what I needed," Marcus said, his arm around my waist. He seemed lighter, more present than he'd been in weeks. "No emails, no deadlines, no screens, just this. To disconnection," Paul toasted, raising his wine. We all drank to that. I went to bed happy, Marcus's body warm against mine. The sound of insects and distant animals creating a symphony outside our windows. I fell asleep within minutes and woke up choking. It was still dark, that deep darkness of 3 or 4 in the morning. My mouth was full of something gritty, earthy. I sat up gasping, spitting, my hands flying to my face. Dirt. My mouth was packed with dirt, not just a little, enough that I could feel it between my teeth, coating my tongue, filling my throat. I stumbled to the tiny bathroom, turned on the light, and looked in the mirror. My face was smeared with soil, not just around my mouth, my cheeks, my forehead, even in my hair, like I'd been buried. "Marcus," I croaked, my voice thick. "Marcus, wake up." He didn't respond. I rushed back to the bedroom, my heart hammering. He was lying on his back, completely still, his mouth hanging open. I could see dirt on his lips too, dark against his pale skin. "Marcus!" I shook him hard. His eyes snapped open, wild and confused. He lurched upright, coughing, spitting, his hands clawing at his face just like mine had. What the fuck?" "You have dirt in your mouth too," I said, my voice shaking. "How is that possible?" We were asleep. We stumbled to the bathroom together, both of us spitting into the sink, watching dark water swirl down the drain. The dirt tasted like decay, like something that had been underground for a very long time. I brushed my teeth 3 times and could still taste it. "Did we sleepwalk?" Marcus asked, but I could hear the doubt in his voice. The RV door was still locked from the inside. The windows were closed. How could we have gotten outside, ingested dirt, and come back without waking? "This doesn't make sense," I whispered. We checked on Paul and Jenna. They were sleeping peacefully, no dirt on them, no signs of disturbance. We didn't wake them. What would we say? That we'd somehow eaten dirt in our sleep? It sounded insane even to me. Marcus and I sat at the dinette, staring at each other in the dim glow of the kitchenette light. The taste of earth lingered, metallic and wrong. "Maybe we should leave," I said quietly. "Because we had a weird dream?" Marcus shook his head. "I'm not letting one strange night ruin the whole trip. We probably just had some kind of shared nightmare." Stress does weird things to people. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly. We didn't sleep anymore that night. Just sat there drinking coffee we made too early, watching through the windows as the sky slowly lightened from black to gray to pale blue. When the sun finally rose, the forest looked normal again, beautiful even. Birds sang. A deer stepped delicately through the clearing, pausing to look at our RV before moving on. In daylight, it was easier to rationalize. Maybe it had been a nightmare. Maybe we'd both experienced some kind of sleep-related episode, some weird psychological phenomenon. The human mind was capable of strange things under stress. Paul and Jenna woke around 8, chipper and rested. We didn't mention the dirt. Marcus and I made breakfast, eggs, bacon, toast, and we all sat outside in folding chairs, enjoying the morning warmth before the Florida heat became oppressive. "Sleep okay?" Jenna asked, and I couldn't tell if I heard something knowing in her voice or if I was just paranoid. "Fine," Marcus lied. "You?" "Like a rock." She smiled, but there was something tight around her eyes, though I had the strangest dream. I dreamed I was digging, just digging and digging deeper and deeper into the earth, and I couldn't stop even though my hands were bleeding. The bacon turned to ash in my mouth. Paul laughed nervously. "That's weird. I had almost the same dream. Except in mine, I was being buried. I could feel the dirt piling on top of me, getting heavier and heavier." Marcus and I exchanged glances. The coffee in my stomach turned acidic. "Did either of you wake up with," I hesitated, "with anything strange? Anything physical?" They both shook their heads. We spent the day hiking, trying to recapture the peace of the evening before. The trails near our camp were beautiful, but strangely empty. We didn't see another person all day. The forest itself felt different in daylight, less welcoming. The trees seemed to lean inward, creating a claustrophobic canopy that blocked most of the sun. The palmetto scrub rustled with movement we couldn't identify. Around noon, we passed a small clearing, maybe a mile from our camp. In the center was a circle of stones, carefully arranged, and in the middle of that circle was something that made my stomach clench, a pile of objects, dolls, jewelry, photographs, rotting food, all arranged with deliberate care. Offerings. "What the hell is that?" Paul asked. Marcus bent closer, examining it without touching. "Looks like some kind of shrine? Maybe a memorial? For what?" Jenna's voice was small. None of us had an answer. We took pictures and kept walking, but the discovery cast a pall over the rest of the hike. When we returned to camp, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of blood orange and purple. That night, no one wanted to sleep. We stayed up late around the campfire, drinking more than we should have, telling increasingly manic stories to avoid silence. Every snap of a branch, every rustle in the undergrowth made us jump. The forest felt like it was breathing around us, contracting and expanding with malevolent life. "I think we should leave tomorrow," Jenna said finally around midnight. "I know we paid for 5 days, but this doesn't feel right. That shrine, the dreams, this whole place just feels wrong." I wanted to agree, to pack up immediately and drive through the night back to civilization, but Marcus shook his head. "We're just spooked. We found some weird local ritual site and it's making us paranoid. We're adults. We can handle 2 more nights in the woods." "Marcus," I started. "Elizabeth, please, I need this. I need to prove that I can still do normal things, that I haven't completely lost my ability to just exist without anxiety crawling up my spine." His voice cracked. "Please, just 2 more nights." I should have insisted. Should have overruled him, thrown our stuff in the RV and left. But I loved him, and he looked so desperate, so I nodded. We all went to bed around 1 in the morning. I took Ambien, hoping to force myself into dreamless sleep. Marcus did too. I woke up with dirt in my mouth again. This time it was worse, not just in my mouth. I could feel it in my throat, packed down into my esophagus, making it hard to breathe. I sat up gasping, clawing at my throat, trying to vomit, but nothing would come up. Just that horrible taste of decay and darkness, like I'd swallowed a grave. Marcus was choking too, both of us stumbling in the dark, crashing into furniture. I turned on every light, and that's when I saw it. Our hands. Our hands were black with dirt, packed under our fingernails, ground into the creases of our palms. Not just surface dirt, deep stains, like we'd been digging for hours. The RV door was unlocked. "What the fuck is happening?" Marcus's voice was raw, terrified. "What the fuck is happening to us?" We heard screaming from the front of the RV. Paul and Jenna. We rushed to the dinette area and found them both sitting up in the converted bed, their faces masks of horror. Jenna's hands were covered in dirt too, dark soil embedded under every nail. Paul had it worse, dirt in his mouth, his nose, even crusted around his eyes like he'd been rubbing them with muddy fingers. "We were outside," Jenna said. her voice shaking so hard the words barely made sense. I remember walking. I couldn't control my body. I was walking toward the creek and I was digging in the bank, just digging and digging, and I was putting the dirt in my mouth, swallowing it, and I couldn't stop. Me too, Paul whispered. I watched my hands moving, but I couldn't control them. It was like something else was inside me, moving me like a puppet. We spent the rest of the night with every light on, sitting in the main area of the RV, too terrified to sleep. We scrubbed our hands and mouths until they were raw, but we couldn't scrub away the memory, the violation of having our bodies controlled by something external. We're leaving at first light, I said, and this time no one argued. But morning never really came. The sky lightened to a sickly gray, but the sun never broke through. The forest around us had changed. Where yesterday there had been a rough road leading back to the main forest roads, now there was only thick undergrowth. The trees had moved closer overnight, forming an impenetrable wall around our clearing. That's impossible, Marcus said, but his voice had no conviction. We'd all seen too much to pretend anything was impossible anymore. Paul tried the RV. The engine turned over but immediately died. He tried again. Again it started, then cut out, like something was killing it deliberately. The battery's fine, Paul said, his mechanics knowledge showing. Everything should work, but it's like something's preventing it from running. We tried our cell phones. No signal, not even emergency calls. The GPS showed us in the middle of blank space, like the forest had erased us from maps. We walk out, Jenna said. We leave the RV and walk back to the main road. But which way was out? The road was gone. The forest looked the same in every direction, dense, dark, unwelcoming. We had a compass, but the needle spun in slow circles, unable to find magnetic north. We'll pick a direction and walk straight, Marcus decided. Eventually we have to hit something, a road, a trail, the forest boundary. We packed light, water, some food, first aid supplies, left the RV behind with all our belongings. The four of us set out walking east, or what we thought was east, pushing through palmetto and pine. We walked for hours. The forest never changed. Same trees, same undergrowth, same oppressive gray light filtering through the canopy. My watch said it was noon, then 1, then 2, but the light never shifted, never brightened or dimmed. We're walking in circles, Jenna said finally. We have to be, but we hadn't turned. We'd walked in a straight line, marking trees as we passed to ensure we didn't double back. Yet when we stopped for water, I saw one of our marks, a scratch Marcus had made on a pine tree with his pocket knife. No, Marcus said, running his hand over the mark. No, that's not possible. We haven't turned around. Maybe we should follow the marks back, Paul suggested. Find the RV again, regroup, try a different approach. We tried. God, we tried. But the marks led nowhere or everywhere or in impossible loops that defied geometry. We'd follow them and find ourselves in clearings we'd never seen, or back where we started, or facing our own marks from different angles that shouldn't have been possible. The light began to fade, which should have been a relief, at least time was passing. But instead it filled me with dread. Whatever had been controlling our bodies at night would come back. And this time we weren't safe in the RV. We build a fire, Paul said. We stay awake, keep the fire bright, make it through the night. We gathered wood in the fading light, built a fire in a small clearing. The flames caught easily, maybe too easily, burning bright and hot. We sat close to it, the four of us forming a tight circle, watching the darkness gather around us like a living thing. The forest at night was never quiet. It should have been. Most animals go silent in the presence of predators. But the night sounds around us grew louder as the hours passed. Not normal night sounds. Breathing. The wet sound of something dragging through mud. Footsteps that stopped just beyond the firelight. There's something out there, Jenna whispered, her hand clutching mine so hard it hurt. I saw it then. Just at the edge of the firelight. A shape. Human-sized but wrong, proportions off. Moving with a jerking, unnatural gait. It circled our fire slowly, never quite entering the light but never leaving either. Don't look at it, Marcus said, his voice tight. Don't make eye contact. But I couldn't help it. I turned my head and met its gaze. Eyes. Too many eyes. Or eyes in wrong places, or maybe just the reflection of our fire making ordinary eyes look monstrous. I couldn't tell. My mind couldn't process what I was seeing, kept sliding off it like trying to grab water. It smiled. That much I'm sure of. It smiled with a mouth too wide, too full of teeth. Then Jenna stood up. Jenna, sit down, Paul said, reaching for her. But she walked toward it. Not fighting, not struggling. Just walking, her face blank, her eyes unfocused. She walked right past the edge of our firelight and into the darkness. We all screamed her name. Paul lunged after her and I grabbed his arm, held him back with strength I didn't know I had. You can't, I said. If you go out there, you won't come back. We heard her in the darkness, heard the wet sound of her hands in dirt, the rhythmic scraping of digging. She was humming something, a melody I almost recognized, something from childhood, something wrong. Paul was crying, struggling against my grip, but Marcus helped me hold him. We kept him in the firelight, kept him with us, listening to his wife dig her own grave in the darkness beyond our sight. The humming stopped around 3 a.m. We waited. The silence was worse than the sounds had been. Then we heard footsteps returning, slow, deliberate, getting closer. Jenna? Paul's voice broke on her name. She walked back into the firelight. She was covered in dirt, her clothes black with it, her hair matted with soil. But she was smiling, that same too-wide smile the thing in the darkness had worn. "I found it," she said, and her voice was wrong, like multiple voices speaking in unison. "I found what's buried here. Do you want to see?" "Jenna, baby, come sit down," Paul said. But he was backing away from her, away from his own wife. She tilted her head at an angle no human neck should bend. "This body remembers you. It has affection for you, but it's not driving anymore." "What are you?" Marcus asked. "Old," she said. "So old. This place is ours. You're digging up what should stay buried. Your bodies know. They come to us at night, trying to put back what you disturbed." "We didn't disturb anything," I said. Her smile widened impossibly. "Your kind always does, just by being here, by breathing our air, by walking our ground. Your presence disturbs, so we make you dig, make you put yourself back under." "Give her back," Paul begged. "Please just give her back. She's still here buried. You can dig her up if you'd like. She's only 6 feet down." Jenna's body laughed, and the sound made my teeth ache. "Or you can join her. Eventually you all will. You'll dig until you can't stop, until you bury yourselves, until you become part of the soil." She walked back into the darkness. We didn't follow. We sat by that fire until dawn, if what came could be called dawn. The sky lightened again to that same sickly gray. The forest looked unchanged. "We have to find her," Paul said, "the real her. If she's buried, we can dig her up, save her." "You heard that thing," Marcus said. "It's not Jenna anymore." "We don't know that," Paul was screaming now, weeks of fear and exhaustion breaking through his calm exterior. "We don't know what's real. Maybe she's still in there. Maybe we can save her." He ran into the forest before we could stop him, crashing through undergrowth, screaming Jenna's name. Marcus and I followed, but the forest swallowed him. We called and called, but only our own echoes answered. We searched for hours, finding nothing but more trees, more palmetto, more of that endless, unchanging scrub forest. When we finally gave up, we were completely lost. No landmarks, no signs, no way to orient ourselves. We walked until exhaustion made us stumble, until my feet were bleeding in my boots, until Marcus was limping on a twisted ankle. We found a small clearing as the light began to fail again. No fire this time. We had no energy left to gather wood. We just collapsed against a fallen log, holding each other, waiting for whatever would come. "I'm sorry," Marcus whispered. "This is my fault. I made us stay." "We all made choices," I said, but I was lying. I blamed him. I blamed him for needing this trip, for refusing to leave when we should have, for being so broken that he'd led us into this nightmare. I must have dozed off because I woke to the sound of digging. It was full dark. Marcus was gone. I could hear him nearby, that wet scraping sound of hands in dirt. I fumbled for my phone, turned on the flashlight, and found him. He was on his hands and knees digging at the base of a massive oak tree, his fingers raw and bleeding, dirt packed under every nail. His eyes were open but unseeing, his face slack, and he was digging down into the earth, creating a hole that already reached his elbows. "Marcus, stop." I grabbed his shoulders, tried to pull him back. He shrugged me off with inhuman strength, kept digging, and then he started to crawl into the hole, pushing himself down into the earth he'd displaced. I screamed, grabbed his legs, pulled with everything I had. But he was strong, impossibly strong, and the earth seemed to be helping him, pulling him down, welcoming him. I watched my husband burrow into the ground like an animal, watched the dirt close over his back, his head, until only his feet were visible. Then those disappeared too. I dug with my bare hands until they bled, until my fingernails tore, until I could taste dirt in my mouth from crying. But the soil was packed solid, hard as concrete. I couldn't find him. Couldn't find any trace he'd ever been there except the disturbed earth. I don't know how long I dug, hours maybe, until the gray dawn light came again and I could see that my hands were black with blood and dirt, indistinguishable from the earth itself. That's when I felt it, the compulsion, the urge to dig, to burrow, to join the others under the earth. My hands moved without my permission, scraping at the ground, and I felt that same horrible absence of control that Jenna had described. I was going to bury myself. I was going to dig my own grave and crawl into it, and some part of me wanted the peace of being underground, of joining Marcus and Jenna and Paul in the dark earth, but something in me resisted. Some stubborn, terrified core of my consciousness that wasn't ready to die, wasn't ready to become part of this place. I bit my tongue hard until blood filled my mouth. The pain shocked me back into my body. I grabbed a rock and slammed it against my own hand, breaking the compulsion with greater pain. Then I ran. I ran through the forest without direction, without hope, just running from the clearing, from the compulsion, from everything. I fell, got up, fell again. Branches tore my clothes and skin. Roots tried to trip me. The forest itself seemed to be fighting my escape. But I kept running. And then, impossibly, I saw light. Real light. Sunlight breaking through the canopy, warm and yellow and real. I burst out of the tree line onto a dirt road and collapsed. A real road, with tire tracks, with signs of human passage. A Forest Service truck appeared around the bend, and I stood in the middle of the road waving my bloody hands until it stopped. The ranger who got out was Carol, the woman from the station who'd checked us in. She took one look at me and went pale. "How long?" I croaked. "How long have we been gone?" 11 days, she said softly. "We've been searching. The RV was found empty 4 days ago. 4 days. It had felt like decades. They took me to a hospital, treated me for dehydration, exposure, infected wounds, asked questions I couldn't answer. Where were the others? What happened? Why was I covered in dirt? I told them the truth. They thought I was delusional from trauma, assigned me a psychiatrist. They found the RV still in that clearing, surrounded by trees that shouldn't have been there. Found signs of our camp, but they never found Marcus, Jenna, or Paul. Search parties combed the area for weeks, brought in dogs, helicopters, used ground-penetrating radar. Nothing. The official report says we were victims of exposure and possible foul play, though no suspects were identified. It says I experienced a dissociative episode, that my memories of supernatural events are trauma-induced hallucinations. They don't know about the dirt I still vomit up sometimes at night. They don't know that I can feel the earth calling to me, whispering that I'm not finished, that I still have to dig. I moved to Arizona after I was released from the psychiatric hospital. Desert, no forests, no deep soil, just rock and sand and sun. But I can still taste the dirt, can still feel it in my lungs, in my stomach, embedding itself deeper into my body day by day. Last week I woke up with soil under my fingernails even though I'd scrubbed them raw before bed. Yesterday I coughed up a clod of earth so dark it seemed to absorb light. And every night I dream of a forest in Florida, of a clearing where 3 people I loved are buried, still breathing, still conscious, trapped in the earth forever. I dream they're calling my name, asking why I left them, begging me to come back and finish what I started. The doctors say the dreams will fade. That trauma takes time to process, but they don't understand. The forest isn't done with me. It let me go, but only temporarily. Like a catch-and-release program, it tagged me and sent me back into the world. I'm writing this down because I need someone to know what happened, what's still happening. If I disappear, if they find me buried somewhere, at least there will be a record. Last night I found a pile of dirt on my pillow. Fresh earth, rich with the smell of decay. I don't know how it got there. My doors were locked, my windows closed, but there it was, carefully mounded like an offering, or a promise. I can feel it now as I write this. The compulsion building, the need to dig. My hands are shaking with the effort of resisting, and every cell in my body is screaming at me to find earth, to plunge my hands into it, to start digging down, down, down. I'm going to fight it. I have to believe I can fight it. But I can taste dirt in my mouth right now. I can feel it between my teeth, coating my tongue. And I didn't eat anything today. The earth is patient. It's been waiting for millions of years. It can wait a little longer for me to give in. But I won't. I need to go outside, just for a minute. There's a garden behind my apartment, bare dirt between the cacti. Just to look, just to touch, just to make sure it's real.
Story 4. I'm Ryan. I'm 34 years old, and I stepped into the backcountry along the Mogollon Rim in Arizona feeling watched from the ground. The plan had been simple enough. 3 days, 2 nights, just me and my girlfriend Cassandra exploring the pine forests that stretch along the edge of that massive limestone escarpment. We'd rented a small RV, nothing fancy, just a 20-footer with a kitchenette and a bed that folded down, and driven out from Phoenix on a Friday afternoon in late September. The heat of the valley had given way to cooler air as we climbed through the Tonto National Forest, winding through stands of ponderosa pine and Douglas fir until we found a dispersed camping area about 3 miles off Forest Road 300. Cassandra had been the one to suggest it. We'd been together for almost 2 years, and things had been strained lately. She worked long hours as a nurse, I'd just been laid off from my job in IT, and we'd been snapping at each other over stupid things. Bills, chores, whether to get married or just keep coasting. She thought getting away from the city would help us reconnect, reminded us why we'd fallen for each other in the first place. I remember parking the RV in a small clearing surrounded by tall pines, their needles carpeting the ground in rust and gold. The air smelled clean, sharp with resin, and that particular dryness that comes with elevation. Cassandra had jumped out first, stretching her arms above her head, her dark hair catching the late afternoon light. "This is perfect," she'd said, grinning. "No cell service, no neighbors, just us." I'd smiled back, but even then, something felt off. Maybe it was the silence. The forest was too quiet. No birds singing, no squirrels chittering in the branches. Just the whisper of wind through pine needles and the faint creak of the RV settling on its leveling jacks. We'd set up camp quickly. Cassandra rolled out our small awning, arranged 2 folding chairs beneath it, and started a fire in the metal ring someone had left behind. I'd grabbed our cooler from inside, pulled out steaks and beer, feeling almost optimistic. The sun was sinking behind the rim, painting the sky in streaks of orange and purple. Beautiful. Peaceful. That first night passed without incident. We ate, drank, talked about nothing important. Cassandra leaned against me as the fire burned down to embers, and for a moment it felt like old times. We crawled into the RV around 10, the little heater taking the edge off the mountain chill, and fell asleep tangled together in the narrow bed. It was the second day when things started to feel wrong. I woke before Cassandra, slipping out of bed carefully so I wouldn't disturb her. The RV's windows were fogged with condensation, and I wiped one clean to look outside. The morning was gray, overcast, the forest shrouded in a thin mist that clung to the ground. I pulled on jeans and a flannel shirt, stepped outside into the cool air. That's when I first felt it, that sensation of being watched. I stood there in the clearing, turning slowly, scanning the trees. Nothing moved. No deer, no birds, no sign of life except the pines swaying gently in the breeze. But the feeling persisted, prickling along the back of my neck. It wasn't just the usual unease of being alone in the wilderness. This was different, specific, like eyes were fixed on me from somewhere I couldn't see. I shook it off, told myself I was being paranoid. Too many horror movies, too much time spent indoors lately. I walked over to the fire ring, kicked at the cold ashes, then decided to take a short walk to clear my head. The path I followed wasn't really a path, just a deer trail winding through the pines. The mist was thicker here, dampening sound, making everything feel muffled and distant. I walked for maybe 10 minutes, breathing in the cold air, trying to enjoy the solitude. Then I stopped. There, in a small patch of bare earth between 2 trees, was an eye. Not an animal's eye, not something dead or decomposing, an actual human eye staring up at me from the soil. I froze, my heart hammering. I blinked, looked again. It was still there. Blue-green iris, white sclera, pupil dilated in the dim light. It didn't move, didn't blink, just stared. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over a root. My rational mind tried to make sense of it. A prank. Someone had buried a glass eye out here as a joke, except it didn't look like glass. It looked wet, alive. I turned and ran back to the RV, crashing through underbrush, heart pounding in my ears. When I burst into the clearing, Cassandra was outside dressed in yoga pants and a sweater, holding a mug of coffee. "Jesus, Ryan, you scared me," she said. "What's wrong?" I stopped, breathing hard. "There's something out there, in the ground. I don't know what it is." She frowned. "What do you mean?" "An eye. I saw an eye, in the dirt." Cassandra set down her mug and walked toward me, concern creasing her forehead. Are you okay? Did you hit your head or something? I'm serious. Come on, I'll show you. I led her back along the trail, my pulse still racing. Part of me hoped it would be gone, that I'd imagined it. But when we reached the spot, the eye was still there. Cassandra gasped, stepping closer. What the hell? She whispered. We stood there for a long moment, staring down at it. The eye stared back. Is it real? Cassandra asked. I don't know. It looks real. She crouched down, reaching toward it, but I grabbed her wrist. Don't touch it. Ryan, it's probably just some kind of plant or fungus. Maybe It's an eye, Cass. Look at it. She pulled her hand back, standing. Okay, this is freaky. Should we call someone? No service, remember? Right. Shit. She wrapped her arms around herself. Maybe we should just leave. Pack up and go. I wanted to agree. Every instinct screamed at me to get back in the RV and drive away from this place. But something stubborn in me resisted. We'd come out here to fix things, to prove we could handle a few days together without falling apart. Running away after one weird sighting felt like admitting defeat. Let's go back to camp, I said. We'll stay alert. If anything else happens, we leave. Deal? Cassandra hesitated, then nodded. Deal. We walked back to the RV in silence. The mist was starting to lift, pale sunlight breaking through the clouds. Cassandra made breakfast, eggs and bacon on the little propane stove, while I sat outside, unable to shake the image of that eye. The way it had stared, unblinking, knowing. After we ate, Cassandra suggested we go for a hike along the rim itself, maybe get a view of the valley below. I agreed, grateful for the distraction. We grabbed water bottles and a small backpack, locked the RV, and set off through the forest. The hiking trail was about a mile from our camp, a maintained path that skirted the edge of the Mogollon Rim. The views were spectacular. Sheer cliffs dropping hundreds of feet to the high desert below, hawks circling in the thermals, the distant smudge of towns far to the south. We walked for a couple of hours, holding hands, not talking much. It felt good. Normal. Then Cassandra stopped abruptly. Ryan, she said, her voice tight. Look. I followed her gaze. There, just off the trail in a small clearing, was another eye. This one stared up from the center of a patch of moss, perfectly round, perfectly human. My stomach dropped. No, that's not possible. We approached slowly. It was identical to the first. Blue-green iris, white sclera, wet and glistening. Cassandra made a small choking sound. We need to leave, she said, right now. This isn't natural. Someone's doing this. Who? We haven't seen anyone. I don't care. We're going back. We're packing up. We're leaving. I didn't argue this time. We hurried back along the trail, breaking into a jog when the forest closed in around us. The silence was oppressive now, the absence of birdsong and animal sounds glaring and wrong. It took us 20 minutes to reach camp, both of us breathing hard, glancing over our shoulders. The RV sat in the clearing exactly as we'd left it. Cassandra fumbled with the keys, unlocking the door, and we both climbed inside. She immediately started grabbing our things, shoving clothes into bags, while I went to the driver's seat and turned the key. Nothing. I turned it again. The dashboard lights flickered weakly, but the engine didn't turn over. Not even a click. What's wrong? Cassandra asked from the back. It won't start. What do you mean it won't start? I mean the battery's dead or something. I don't know. I got out, popped the hood, stared at the engine like I had any idea what I was looking at. Everything looked fine. No loose cables, no obvious damage. I tried the key again. Nothing. Cassandra joined me outside, her face pale. What do we do? I'll check the battery connections. Maybe something came loose on the drive up. I grabbed a wrench from the small toolbox we kept in one of the exterior storage compartments and tightened the battery terminals. They were already snug. I checked the fuses, the connections, everything I could think of. The RV should have started. Maybe we can walk out, Cassandra said. Flag down someone on the main road. That's at least 3 miles through the forest. Better than staying here. She was right, but the thought of walking through those trees, knowing that someone, was watching us, made my skin crawl. Still, we didn't have a choice. We gathered essentials: water, some food, a flashlight, my hunting knife. It was early afternoon. If we moved fast, we could reach the main road before dark. Cassandra locked the RV behind us, and we set off down the dirt track that led back to Forest Road 300. The forest felt different now, hostile. The trees seemed to lean inward, the shadows deeper and darker despite the sunlight filtering through the canopy. We walked quickly, not running but close to it, our footsteps crunching on pine needles and gravel. Halfway to the main road, Cassandra grabbed my arm. "Ryan, stop!" I stopped, listened. At first, I heard nothing. Then, faintly, I caught it. Footsteps, behind us, matching our pace. I turned slowly. The trail behind us was empty. "There's no one there," I said. "I hear it," Cassandra whispered. "Someone's following us." We stood frozen, listening. The footsteps continued, steady and deliberate, but I couldn't see anyone. The sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, echoing through the trees. "Run," I said. We ran. The trail blurred beneath our feet, branches whipping at our faces. Behind us, the footsteps quickened, keeping pace. My lungs burned, legs pumping, Cassandra gasping beside me. The sound of pursuit grew louder, closer, and I risked a glance backward. Still nothing, but the footsteps were right behind us now. Cassandra tripped, went down hard, and I skidded to a stop, grabbing her arm and hauling her upright. Her knee was bleeding, jeans torn, but she didn't cry out. We kept moving, slower now, Cassandra limping. The footsteps stopped. We stood there in the middle of the trail, breathing hard, listening. Silence. Not even the wind. Just our ragged breaths and the hammering of my pulse in my ears. "What the fuck is happening?" Cassandra whispered. I didn't answer. Couldn't. We started walking again, slower, Cassandra leaning on me. The main road had to be close, just a little farther. Then I saw it. Another eye. This one was in the middle of the trail, directly in our path. We stopped, staring down at it. It stared back. "No," Cassandra said. "No, no, no." I pulled her around it, giving the eye a wide berth. We kept walking. 10 steps later, another eye, then another. They appeared every few yards now, scattered along the trail like grotesque markers, all staring up at us, all unblinking. "They're hurting us," Cassandra said, her voice breaking. "They're making us go somewhere." "Who? Who's doing this?" "I don't know." The eyes led us off the main trail, down a narrow path I hadn't noticed before. We didn't want to follow, but going back meant passing through that field of staring eyes, and neither of us could bring ourselves to do it. So we walked, step by step, deeper into the forest. The path ended in a small depression, a hollow surrounded by tall pines. The ground here was bare, no grass or needles, just packed earth, and in the center of the hollow was a circle of eyes. Dozens of them, hundreds, all embedded in the soil, all staring up at the sky. Cassandra made a sound like a wounded animal and collapsed to her knees. I stood there, frozen, staring at the nightmare spread before us. Then the eyes blinked. All of them. At once. I grabbed Cassandra and hauled her to her feet, dragging her backward out of the hollow. She was sobbing now, incoherent, and I was barely holding it together myself. We stumbled through the forest, no longer following any path, just moving away from that place. Night was falling. The forest grew darker, shadows pooling between the trees. I had no idea where we were or which direction led back to camp or the road. We were lost. "We need to stop," Cassandra gasped. I can't keep going. We can't stop. Not here. Ryan, please." I looked at her. She was shaking, covered in sweat and dirt and blood from her torn knee. I wasn't much better. We needed rest, needed to think. I pulled out the flashlight and swept the beam around, looking for any kind of shelter. There, a fallen log, big enough to huddle behind. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. We crouched there, backs against the log, the flashlight between us casting a weak circle of light. "What are those things?" Cassandra whispered. "I don't know. They're not human. They can't be human." "I know." We sat in silence. The darkness beyond our small circle of light was absolute. I strained my ears, listening for footsteps or movement, but heard nothing. The forest was utterly still. Then, from somewhere in the darkness, a voice spoke. "Ryan!" My blood turned to ice. It was my voice, my exact voice, speaking my name. "Ryan, where are you?" Cassandra grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "That's you," she whispered. "That's your voice." "It's not me." "Ryan, I'm lost. Help me." The voice was closer now. I pointed the flashlight toward it, but the beam only penetrated a few feet into the darkness. Shadows danced at the edge of the light, shapes that might have been trees or something else. "Cassandra," another voice said. This one was Cassandra's voice, perfect in every detail. "Cassandra, I'm scared." "Where did you go?" She whimpered, pressing against me. "Make it stop. Cassandra, please, I need you." The voices circled us now, coming from all directions. My voice and hers calling to each other, pleading and desperate. I pulled out the hunting knife, gripping it so hard my knuckles went white. The flashlight flickered, dimmed, and I shook it frantically. The batteries were dying. "No, no, come on," I muttered, smacking the light against my palm. It brightened for a moment, then died completely. Darkness swallowed us. I couldn't see Cassandra, couldn't see my own hand in front of my face, but I felt her pressed against me, trembling. And I heard the voices, closer now, so close they might have been right beside us. "Ryan, help me, help me, help me. Cassandra, I'm lost, I'm lost, I'm lost." Over and over, like a broken recording, the voices chanted. And beneath them, I heard something else. Breathing, slow and steady. Not Cassandra's panicked gasps, not mine, something else. Multiple somethings, all around us. Then I felt it. A hand on my shoulder. But Cassandra was pressed against my other side, both her hands clutching my arm. I screamed and lurched forward, dragging Cassandra with me. We ran blindly through the darkness, crashing into trees, tripping over roots. Behind us, the voices followed, laughing now. Not human laughter, something else. I don't know how long we ran. Time lost meaning. Eventually, we stumbled into a clearing and moonlight broke through the clouds, illuminating the forest in silver. We stopped, gasping, looking around wildly. The RV. We were back at the RV. "How?" Cassandra sobbed. "We were miles away." I didn't answer. The RV sat there, dark and silent, exactly as we'd left it hours ago. I pulled Cassandra toward it, fumbling for the keys in my pocket. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely fit the key into the lock. Inside, I slammed the door and engaged the deadbolt. Cassandra collapsed onto the bench seat, burying her face in her hands. I moved to the driver's seat, turned the key. The engine roared to life. "It's working," I said. "The engine's working. We can go." I didn't wait. I threw the RV into gear and hit the gas, wheels spinning on the dirt before catching traction. We lurched forward, bouncing over the rough ground, heading back toward the main road. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the trees flashing past. I drove faster than was safe, the RV swaying dangerously on the uneven terrain. Cassandra had moved to the passenger seat, gripping the dashboard, her face white in the glow of the instruments. "Watch out!" she screamed. I slammed on the brakes. Standing in the middle of the track, caught in the headlights, was a figure. It looked human, naked, pale skin stretched over a too thin frame, and covering its body, embedded in its flesh like barnacles on a ship, were eyes. Dozens of eyes, all blinking independently. It tilted its head, studying us. Then it smiled. I threw the RV into reverse, backing up wildly. The figure didn't move, just stood there smiling, its body covered in staring, blinking eyes. I cranked the wheel, trying to turn around, and the RV tilted dangerously, two wheels lifting off the ground before slamming back down. "Go, go, go!" Cassandra screamed. I found another track, narrower but heading in the right direction, and floored it. Branches scraped the sides of the RV, a hideous screaming sound, but I didn't slow down. In the rearview mirror, I could see the figure standing motionless, watching us disappear into the forest. We drove for what felt like hours. The track twisted and turned, and I had no idea if we were going the right way, but I didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Cassandra was crying silently, tears streaming down her face. Finally, blessedly, the track widened and smoothed, and I saw pavement ahead. Forest Road 300. I nearly sobbed with relief as the RV's tires hit asphalt. I turned toward the main highway, driving faster, putting distance between us and that nightmare forest. We didn't stop until we reached Payson, 40 miles away. I pulled into the parking lot of a brightly lit gas station, killed the engine, and sat there shaking. Cassandra opened her door and vomited onto the pavement. Inside the gas station, everything was normal. Fluorescent lights, country music playing from tinny speakers, a bored clerk scrolling through his phone. The normalcy of it almost broke me. "You folks okay?" the clerk asked, looking up. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I wanted to laugh. "A ghost, if only. We're fine," I managed. "Just need gas." We filled the tank, bought coffee we didn't drink, and got back on the road. Neither of us suggested going back to Phoenix. I drove north, then west, putting miles between us and the Mogollon Rim. We didn't speak, didn't look at each other, just stared out the windshield as the highway unrolled before us. We ditched the RV in Flagstaff, left it in a rental return lot with a note saying we were done with it early. Took an Uber to a cheap motel. Cassandra showered for an hour, scrubbing her skin raw. I sat on the bed, staring at the wall, trying to process what had happened. That night, I dreamed of eyes, opening in the walls, the ceiling, the floor, staring at me, blinking, watching. I woke, screaming. Cassandra was gone. Her clothes, her bag, everything. There was a note on the nightstand scrawled in her handwriting. "I can't do this. I can't be near you. I'm sorry." I tried calling her, voicemail. I tried texting. Nothing. That was 3 months ago. I'm back in Phoenix now, living in a studio apartment I can barely afford. Can't hold a job, can't sleep. Every shadow holds eyes. Every patch of bare earth makes me stop and stare, waiting for something to appear. I've done research, dug through folklore, Native American legends, internet forums full of paranoid ramblings. The closest thing I've found is a story from the Yavapai people about ground watchers, spirits that live in the earth, watching for trespassers, judging those who disturb the land. They mark you, the stories say. Once they've seen you, they never stop watching. I think they marked me, marked us. Last week, I found an eye in the dirt outside my apartment building. I ran back inside, locked the door, shoved furniture against it. I stayed awake all night, lights blazing. In the morning, it was gone. But I know it was there. I've tried to contact Cassandra. Her number's disconnected. Her social media disappeared. Her nursing job says she quit without notice. It's like she vanished. Sometimes I wonder if she made it out at all. If what I saw get into that Uber was really her or something else. Something that blinked when it thought I wasn't looking. I don't leave my apartment much anymore. When I do, I keep my eyes on the horizon, never looking down. I'm terrified of what I might see staring back at me from the ground. But even now, sitting here in my locked apartment, I feel it. That sensation I first felt at the Mogollon Rim. The knowledge that something is watching me. I tell myself I'm being paranoid, that it was all just stress or gas from a fissure or some hallucinogen in the water. But deep down, I know the truth. They're still watching. They've always been watching, and one day I'm going to look down and see an eye opening in the floor beneath my feet, and I'll know that I've been marked all along, that I never really left that forest, that some part of me is still there in that hollow surrounded by hundreds of blinking eyes. I stepped into the backcountry along the Mogollon Rim, feeling watched from the ground, and now, 3 months later, that feeling has never left. It follows me everywhere, in crowds, in empty rooms, in the middle of the night when I jolt awake with the certainty that something is staring at me through the darkness. The worst part is, I'm starting to see them in other people too. I'll be walking down the street, and I'll catch a glimpse of someone's arm, and for just a second, I'll see an eye embedded in their skin, blinking, watching. Then I'll blink, and it's gone, and they're just a normal person going about their day, and I'm the crazy one. Maybe I am crazy. Maybe something broke in my brain out there in those woods. Maybe Cassandra realized it and ran before I could drag her down with me. Or maybe she saw them too, saw what I see, and couldn't live with it. I've started sleeping with the lights on, all of them. The electricity bill is insane, but I can't stand the darkness anymore. Because in the dark, I hear them, footsteps that match mine, breathing that isn't my own, voices that sound like me, calling my name. Last night, I woke to find dirt on my pillow. Just a small pile, damp and dark, smelling of pine and decay. I don't know how it got there. I don't remember going outside, but when I brushed it away, there was an indentation in my pillow, like something had been pressed against it. Something round and wet. I can't live like this much longer. I can feel myself coming apart, piece by piece. The rational part of my brain knows I need help, knows I should check myself into a hospital, get medication, talk to someone. But the other part, the part that knows what we saw was real, that part is terrified that if I tell anyone, they'll think I'm insane and lock me away. And if I'm locked away, in some sterile room with no control over my environment, what happens when they find me there? What happens when eyes start opening in the walls of my cell? I think about Cassandra every day. Wonder if she's okay. Wonder if she's seeing what I'm seeing. Part of me hopes she is, because at least then I'd know I'm not crazy. But most of me hopes she got away clean, that whatever marked me didn't mark her, that she's living her life somewhere safe and normal, working her nursing shifts, falling in love with someone new, someone who didn't drag her into the forest to be seen by things that live in the earth. I've thought about going back, driving out to the Mogollon Rim, hiking into those woods, and confronting whatever is watching me, demanding answers, demanding that they let me go. But I'm terrified of what I might find, terrified that if I go back, I won't come back out, or worse, that I will come back out, but I'll be different, changed, marked even more deeply than I already am. So I stay in my apartment. I keep the lights on, I avoid looking down, and I wait for the day when I'll wake up and find eyes opening in my own skin, when I'll become one of them, a watcher in the earth, studying the living with those cold, unblinking gazes. I stepped into the backcountry along the Mogollon Rim, feeling watched from the ground, and now I understand that the ground has always been watching, that beneath every patch of earth, behind every shadow, in every dark and forgotten place, they are there, waiting, watching, marking those who wander too far from the light, and once they've marked you, they never look away. Story 5. I'm Ella, 32 years old, and when I knelt beside Whitefish Lake in the Flathead National Forest of Montana on that autumn afternoon, my reflection in the water mouthed different words than the ones leaving my lips. I had driven my renovated Winnebago Mini Winnie up from Boise 3 days prior, seeking solitude after a brutal breakup that left me questioning everything I thought I knew about trust. The Forest Service road leading to the dispersed camping area near Whitefish Lake was rutted and narrow, lined with lodgepole pines so thick they formed a cathedral ceiling overhead. I'd chosen this spot deliberately, remote enough that I wouldn't see another human soul, close enough to the lake that I could hear water lapping against the shore at night. The first 2 days had been perfect. Crisp mountain air, the smell of pine resin, and a silence so complete it felt like a physical presence. I'd spent my time reading, sketching the tree line, and trying to remember who I was before I'd molded myself into someone else's ideal partner. The RV was my cocoon, outfitted with everything I needed: a small kitchenette, a bed that folded down from the wall, solar panels on the roof to keep my phone and laptop charged. That third afternoon, I decided to refill my water bottles at the lake. The trail down from my campsite was barely 100 yards, winding through huckleberry bushes that had already dropped their leaves. I remember thinking how the forest felt watchful, but I attributed it to my imagination. Too many years living in the city had made me unused to the attention of wild places. I knelt on a flat rock at the water's edge, unscrewing the cap of my first bottle. The lake was mirror-smooth, reflecting the sky in perfect detail. As I leaned forward to submerge the bottle, I caught sight of my face in the water. "Just need to fill these up," I said aloud, a habit I'd developed living alone. But my reflection's lips moved differently. They formed words I couldn't quite make out, speaking in a rhythm that didn't match my own speech. I jerked back, nearly dropping the bottle. The water rippled, distorting the image. I laughed nervously, the sound too loud in the stillness. "Trick of the light," I told myself. "Angle of the sun." I'd been alone for 3 days. Maybe I was starting to see things. I filled the bottles quickly, not looking at the water's surface, and hurried back to the RV. The door's lock clicked with a satisfaction that felt exaggerated, as if I were locking out something more than just the wilderness. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that solitude was playing tricks on my mind. That night, I couldn't shake the image. I kept replaying it, the way my reflection's mouth had moved with purpose, forming words that seemed urgent, important. What had it been trying to say? I poured a glass of wine from the box I'd brought, then another, trying to drown the unease. The RV's windows showed only darkness pressed against the glass. I pulled the curtains shut. Around midnight I heard footsteps outside. Not the random sounds of animals moving through underbrush, but deliberate steps circling the RV. I sat up in bed, heart hammering. The footsteps were measured, patient. They completed one full circuit of the vehicle, then another. I grabbed my phone, ready to call for help, but I had no signal. I'd known this camping here, had embraced it. The footsteps stopped at my door. I held my breath, waiting. Minutes passed. Then whoever, whatever, was out there moved away, and I heard nothing more. I didn't sleep. I sat with my back against the wall, a kitchen knife in my lap, watching the curtained windows for any sign of movement. When dawn finally grayed the edges of the curtains, I felt foolish but still frightened. I dressed quickly and stepped outside. The morning was cold enough to show my breath. I walked around the RV, looking for prints for any sign that someone had been there. The ground was covered in pine needles and hard-packed dirt, difficult to read. But on the driver's side door, I found something that made my stomach turn. A handprint, pressed into the dust that had accumulated on the white paint. But it was wrong. The fingers were too long, the palm too narrow, and it was positioned at an odd angle, as if whoever made it had been standing sideways or had joints that bent differently than human ones should. I got back inside the RV and locked the door. My hands shook as I started the engine. I would leave, drive back to civilization, forget this place. But when I shifted into gear and pressed the gas, the tires spun uselessly. I got out to check and found all 4 tires had sunk into the ground, not stuck in mud, but sunken, as if the earth had softened beneath them overnight and then hardened again with the wheels half buried. I tried for an hour to dig them out, but the dirt was like concrete. The small shovel I'd brought was useless against it. Sweating despite the cold, I sat on the RV's back bumper and tried to think. I was maybe 5 miles from the main highway, 10 miles from the nearest town. I could walk it, but the thought of hiking through those woods, of being exposed and vulnerable, made my skin crawl. I decided to stay put, at least for now. I had food for another week, water for 3 or 4 days if I was careful. Someone would eventually come looking. I told my sister where I was going, and she'd worry if I didn't check in after a week. That afternoon, I returned to the lake. I told myself I needed more water, but truthfully, I needed to know, needed to understand what I'd seen. The trail felt longer than it had the day before, as if the distance had stretched overnight. The trees seemed closer together, their branches forming patterns that reminded me of reaching hands. At the water's edge, I knelt again on the same flat rock. This time, I looked directly at my reflection, challenging it. "What do you want?" I said to the water. My reflection's mouth moved immediately. It formed 3 words, clear and distinct. "Don't trust her." I stumbled backward off the rock, landing hard on my tailbone. Pain shot up my spine, but I barely felt it. My reflection hadn't moved its mouth in sync with mine. It had answered me, spoken independently. "Who?" I shouted at the lake. "Don't trust who." But the water showed only ripples now, distorted circles expanding outward. I waited, breathing hard, but my reflection didn't respond again. When the water finally calmed, it showed only my face. Normal, moving in perfect sync with my movements. I ran back to the RV. Inside, I locked the door and closed all the curtains. My mind raced. Was I having a breakdown? Had I brought something with me from my old life? Some psychosis triggered by stress and isolation? Or was there actually something wrong with this place? Something that allowed reflections to speak their own thoughts? I opened my laptop, hoping maybe I could pick up a weak signal, find information about Whitefish Lake, about strange occurrences. But the battery was dead. I knew I'd charged it the night before. The solar panels had been in full sun all day. I checked the panel gauge. No power. The panels themselves looked fine, but they weren't generating anything. My phone was at 30%. I turned it off to preserve the battery. The afternoon crawled by. I tried to read but couldn't focus. I made food I didn't eat. I kept glancing at the windows expecting to see something looking in, but the curtains remained still. As evening approached, I heard a sound that made me freeze. A woman's voice calling from somewhere in the woods. "Ella? Ella, are you there?" It sounded like my sister, Rachel, but that was impossible. She was in Boise, didn't even know exactly where I was camping, just the general area. I went to the window and carefully pulled back the curtain an inch. The voice came again, closer now. "Ella, I'm worried about you. Please come out." I couldn't see anyone, but the voice was definitely coming from the trees to the east. It sounded exactly like Rachel. Same tone, same slight rasp. From years of smoking, she'd finally quit. "Rachel," I called through the door. "Is that you?" "Yes. Thank God. I've been looking everywhere. Your car, the RV, it's stuck. I can help. Come out." Something felt wrong. Rachel couldn't have gotten here this fast. Couldn't have found my exact campsite. And the voice, while perfect in every way, came from the wrong direction. If she'd approached by the only road, she'd be coming from the west. "How did you find me?" I asked. A pause. Then, "You told me where you'd be. Come out, Ella. It's getting dark." I hadn't told her my specific campsite. I told her the forest and the general area, nothing more. "What's our mother's maiden name?" I asked. Another pause. Longer this time. When the voice came back, it was slightly different. Still Rachel's voice, but flatter, missing some essential quality. "Why are you asking me that? Just come outside. Answer the question. Your mother's maiden name is Henderson. Now come out." Our mother's maiden name was Walsh. Henderson was our grandmother's name, something anyone could find online if they were looking. This wasn't Rachel. "Go away," I said, my voice shaking. The voice outside shifted then, became something else. Multiple voices layered together, some high, some low, all speaking in unison. "Come out, come out, come out, come out." I clamped my hands over my ears, but the sound penetrated anyway, vibrating through the RV's thin walls. I curled up on the bed, squeezing my eyes shut, and eventually the voices stopped. Night fell. I sat in darkness, not daring to turn on any lights. Hours passed. At some point, I must have dozed, because I woke to find myself standing outside the RV, barefoot in the cold dirt, facing the forest. I had no memory of unlocking the door, no memory of walking out. I was simply there, as if I'd teleported. The trees ahead of me rustled despite the absence of wind. Something moved between the trunks, too tall to be human, its movements wrong, joints bending in extra places. I couldn't see it clearly, just a suggestion of form, a piece of darkness that was somehow darker than the rest. I ran back to the RV, feet screaming at the rough ground, and threw myself inside. I locked the door, pushed the small table against it, then wedged myself into the corner farthest from all windows and doors. Morning came eventually. I was exhausted, but too frightened to sleep. In daylight, I forced myself to make coffee, to eat a granola bar, to pretend this was normal. I needed a plan. I couldn't stay here another night. I would have to walk out, risk the woods, because staying was clearly more dangerous. I packed a backpack with water, food, my phone, a knife. I put on hiking boots, layered clothing. Then I stepped outside. The RV's tires were no longer sunken. They sat normally on the ground, as if they'd never been buried at all. I stared at them, not understanding. Had I imagined it? No. I'd spent an hour trying to dig them out. They'd been stuck. I ran to the driver's seat and turned the key. The engine started smoothly. I could leave. Just drive away. But as I reached for the gear shift, I caught sight of my reflection in the rearview mirror. My reflection's mouth moved, forming words silently but urgently. "She will follow you." I met my own eyes in the mirror. "Who?" I whispered. My reflection pointed behind me. I turned to look at the empty RV interior, then back to the mirror. My reflection was no longer pointing. It was screaming silently, face contorted in terror, pointing more frantically behind me. I spun around. Nothing. The RV was empty except for me. But when I looked back at the mirror, my reflection had stopped pointing. It was simply staring at me, tears running down its face. I put the RV in gear and drove. The Forest Service road seemed different. Longer. The ruts were deeper, the turns sharper. Trees had fallen across the path in places where they hadn't been before, forcing me to maneuver carefully around them. It should have taken 20 minutes to reach the main highway. After an hour, I was still on the dirt road, still surrounded by forest. I stopped the RV and checked my paper map. According to it, I should have reached the highway half an hour ago, but the road just kept going, winding through trees that all looked the same. I kept driving. The gas gauge dropped slowly but steadily. 2 hours. 3. The road never ended. The forest never changed. And then I saw something that made me hit the brakes hard enough to throw me against the steering wheel. My RV, parked on the side of the road ahead, exactly as I'd left it that morning. But I was inside my RV, driving it. I got out slowly. The parked RV ahead was identical to mine. Same model, same dent in the back bumper from when I'd backed into a post, same sticker on the rear window. I approached it carefully. The door was locked. I cupped my hands to the window and peered inside. Someone was lying on the bed. I could see legs, an arm dangling off the side. The body wasn't moving. "Hello?" I called, knocking on the door. No response. I tried the handle again, then walked around to the driver's side. That door was unlocked. I opened it carefully, every instinct screaming at me to run. The RV's interior was wrong. The bed was there, and the kitchenette. But everything was covered in dust, thick and gray, as if the vehicle had been abandoned for years. Spider webs stretched between surfaces. The air smelled of rot and mildew. And on the bed, covered in dust, was a body. My body. I recognized my clothes, my hair, the small scar on my wrist from a childhood accident. But the body was desiccated, mummified, lips pulled back from teeth in a final grimace. The eyes were empty sockets, and across the forehead, carved into the leathery skin, were 3 words: "Don't trust her." I backed out of the RV, gagging. This wasn't possible. I was alive. I was here. That couldn't be me. I ran back to my RV, the one I'd been driving, and locked myself inside. My hands shook as I started the engine again. I needed to get out of here, needed to wake up from whatever nightmare this was. But as I looked in the rearview mirror, preparing to reverse, I saw my reflection smile at me. Not the smile I was making. My face was tight with fear. My reflection's smile was wide, triumphant. And I realized the truth like ice water down my spine. I wasn't driving my RV. I hadn't been, maybe since that first night. The thing in the lake hadn't just warned me. It had tried to tell me, "Don't trust her. Don't trust the version of me that had woken up in the RV that first morning after the footsteps circled outside. Don't trust the Ella who had kept me here, playing games, feeding on my fear." I lunged for the door handle, but it wouldn't open. The locks clicked down by themselves. The curtains drew themselves shut, and my reflection in the rearview mirror kept smiling as the RV began to drive itself. steering off the road and deeper into the forest, toward something I couldn't see but could feel waiting in the trees. "Let me out!" I screamed, pounding on the windows, but the glass wouldn't break. The RV moved smoothly over ground that should have been impassable, branches scraping along the sides like fingernails. I don't know how long we drove. Hours, maybe, or days. Time felt wrong, elastic. Eventually, the RV stopped in a clearing I'd never seen before. The door unlocked with a soft click. I knew I shouldn't go out. Knew it was what the thing wanted. But staying inside felt worse somehow. Staying inside with my reflection, which no longer mimicked my movements at all, which now pressed its hands against the mirror's surface from the inside, beckoning me to look. I stepped out into the clearing. The forest around me was wrong. The trees were twisted, their bark peeling in strips that looked like flayed skin. The ground was covered in a carpet of what I first thought were leaves, but then realized were moths. Thousands of them. Their wings the color of dried blood. They didn't move as I walked through them. In the center of the clearing stood a woman. She wore my face, my clothes, even had my posture. But her eyes were wrong. Too bright, too aware, filled with something ancient and hungry. "I've been waiting," she said with my voice. 3 days, feeding on your fear, growing stronger, learning you, becoming you. "What are you?" I whispered. "I'm what the lake holds," she said. "Reflections. All the people who've looked into those waters and seen themselves looking back. We collect here, in the space between what is and what might be. And when someone stays too long, looks too deeply, we can step through. The body in the RV was the last one, 6 months ago. A man camping alone. He saw his reflection speak and didn't run fast enough. By the time he realized I wasn't him, I'd already taken his place. I lived his life for 3 weeks before the original rotted away to nothing." She smiled. "You'll last longer, I think. You're stronger. It might be months before you fade." "No," I said, backing away. But there was nowhere to go. The forest pressed in on all sides. "I've already learned everything I need," she continued. "Your memories, your mannerisms, your sister Rachel. I know her phone number, her address, how you two talk to each other. I'll drive back to Boise tomorrow. I'll live your life, and you'll stay here, in the between place until there's nothing left of you but dust and whispers." She took a step toward me and I ran. I crashed through the twisted trees, moths rising in clouds around me. Behind me, I heard her laughing. My laugh, but wrong. Too full of joy at my suffering. I ran until my lungs burned, until my legs gave out, until I collapsed against a tree that felt like bone under my hands. The forest was a maze. Every direction looked the same. I was lost, truly lost, in a place that existed outside the normal world. That's when I heard the water. I followed the sound, crawling when I couldn't walk anymore. The trees opened onto a shoreline. Not Whitefish Lake, but something else. A vast body of water that stretched to a horizon that bent wrong, curved upward instead of following the earth. And at the water's edge, I saw them. Dozens of people kneeling, staring at their reflections. Their clothes spanned decades. A man in 1950s hiking gear, a woman in 1970s bell-bottoms, a teenager in modern athletic wear. All frozen, all staring at the water where their reflections moved independently, living lives they'd stolen. I understood then. This was the lake's true form, the interface between our world and something else. Whitefish Lake was just one of its many surfaces, a portal it could reach through to touch our reality. "Join them," said my doppelganger's voice behind me. "Look at the water. See yourself as you could be, free, perfect, complete. Let yourself sink into that image. It's easier than fighting." I looked at the water. My reflection stared back, and it was everything I'd wanted to be. Confident, healed, whole. It smiled at me, beckoning. The water was so still, so perfect. I could feel the pull of it, the desire to let go, to merge with that better version of myself. My hand reached out toward the surface, but then I remembered. My reflection in the rearview mirror, crying. The real Ella, trapped behind glass trying to warn me. She had fought. She had resisted. And if she could fight from inside a reflection, then I could fight out here. I pulled my hand back and turned to face my doppelganger. She looked surprised, almost impressed. "No," I said, "you can't fight me. I'm you, but better, stronger. I'm everything you wanted to be." "You're nothing," I said, and I meant it. "You're empty. A hollow thing wearing my face. You don't have my memories. You stole them. You don't have my feelings. You mimicked them. You're just a reflection. And reflections can't exist without something to reflect." I saw fear in her eyes then, just for a moment, and I realized the truth. She needed me to give up, to fade, to validate her existence as my replacement. Without the original, the copy had no meaning. I closed my eyes. I am Ella Morrison. I am 32 years old. I came to Flathead National Forest to heal from a breakup. I drove a Winnebago Mini Winnie. I am real. I am here. I am not giving up. When I opened my eyes, the water was boiling, thrashing. The kneeling figures around its shore were screaming, their mouths opening wide enough to split their faces. My doppelganger was flickering, her form becoming transparent. "No," she hissed. "You can't." "I am Ella Morrison," I repeated, louder. "I exist. I am real." The forest around me began to tear, reality bleeding through in patches. I could see the true Flathead National Forest beyond the twisted trees, could see morning sunlight where before there had been only darkness. My doppelganger lunged at me, but her hands passed through my shoulders like mist. She was screaming my name, or her name, or the name we'd shared. Then she was gone, evaporating like morning fog. I found myself standing beside the real Whitefish Lake, early morning sun warm on my face. My RV was parked 50 yards away, exactly where I'd left it. The tires sat normally on the ground. There were no handprints on the doors. I walked to the lake's edge and looked at my reflection. It moved exactly as I moved. I knelt and touched the water. It was cold, nothing more, just water, just a reflection. But as I stood to leave, my reflection's mouth moved one final time, out of sync. "Thank you." I drove out of Flathead National Forest that morning. The road was exactly as long as it should have been. 20 minutes to the highway, an hour to the nearest town. I stopped at a diner and ordered coffee and eggs, just to feel normal, to be around people. But nothing felt right. Every mirror I passed, I checked to make sure my reflection matched my movements. Every window showed me my face, and I studied it obsessively, looking for signs that I wasn't who I thought I was. Because here's what terrifies me, what keeps me awake every night. I remember fighting the doppelganger. I remember resisting. I remember declaring my reality and feeling the forest tear apart. But I also remember walking into that clearing and making a choice. Choosing to look at the water. Choosing to reach out to that better reflection. Choosing to let myself sink. I remember both things. Both outcomes. Both versions of that moment exist in my head with equal clarity. Sometimes I catch myself doing things I don't remember deciding to do. Taking routes I've never driven. Knowing information about my sister's life that she never told me. Speaking in turns of phrase that don't feel quite natural in my mouth. And every time I look in a mirror, I have to ask myself, am I Ella Morrison, who escaped the lake? Or am I the reflection who learned so completely how to be Ella Morrison that I've convinced even myself? Last week, Rachel called me. We talked for an hour about nothing important. Before she hung up, she said, "It's good to have you back. You seemed different when you first got home from that camping trip. But now, you seem like yourself again." I thanked her. We said goodbye. I hung up the phone. Then I went to the bathroom and stared at myself in the mirror for 20 minutes, searching for any sign, any tell. My reflection stared back, perfectly synchronized, perfectly me. But sometimes, when I'm not paying attention, when my mind wanders and my guard drops, I catch my reflection moving just a fraction of a second out of sync, and I wonder which side of the glass I'm really on. I wonder if there's a difference anymore. I wonder if, somewhere in Montana, beside a pristine lake, the real Ella Morrison is still kneeling with the others, staring at her reflection, watching it live her life, watching it write this account, watching it remember being her while she slowly forgets she was ever anything at all. I wonder, but I keep living, keep working, keep calling my sister every week, keep checking mirrors and being unable to remember which choice I really made in that clearing between the worlds. And at night, when I'm alone, I sometimes hear footsteps circling my apartment, patient and measured, waiting for something I don't understand. I'm Ella Morrison. I'm 32 years old. I came to Flathead National Forest for quiet and learned what quiet costs. I escaped. I think I escaped. God help me, I need to believe I escaped.